Howdy folks, welcome to Panel Pursuit, where stories come to life. Let's dive in. The scene shifts to the Hunters Guild headquarters, where Sung Jin-Woo is carefully reporting to Choi Jong-in about the recent dungeon incident. Sun explains thoughtfully that although Jinwoo joined their mining team, his true intentions remain unclear. He didn't seem like he joined with the intention to fight, Sun admits, reflecting on the chaotic scene. The dungeon boss was overwhelmingly powerful, capable of hiding his magical presence completely and commanding a vast high-orc army. It was never an opponent our B team could handle alone. Jinwoo, initially there as a porter, had no choice but to step in. Choi listens attentively, concern deepening on his face. A hunter who summons multiple creatures, fights with assassin-like agility, and even adds slain enemies to his forces. He muses aloud. Is this truly the extent of his power, or does he still hold back even more? He glances at Sun seriously. Tell me honestly, Ji-hun, how does he compare to me? Sun hesitates momentarily, then replies with measured honesty. Guild raids succeed because different hunters complement each other's weaknesses. Attack, defense, support. Everyone fills a specific role. Sun pauses, shaking his head slightly. But Jinwoo defies that logic entirely. Guild Master, could you single-handedly clear a dungeon that would be considered dangerous even for a top-tier strike force? Choi frowns deeply, pondering the scenario before admitting quietly, impossible. No matter how powerful an individual is, defending against countless charging monsters alone, that's beyond me. With a bitter smile, he adds, my title of Ultimate Soldier seems almost laughable now. Sun nods gently, his expression resolute. I know it isn't my place to advise guild operations, but for the sake of our future, please bring Hunter Sung Jin-Woo to our guild. The narrative shifts to a bustling scene outside the Hunters Association building, where numerous reporters eagerly gather. In a luxury car, Lee Min-sung watches the spectacle confidently, holding a headline he plans to see printed tomorrow after announcing his hunter rank publicly. Moments later, two cars arrive, carrying Baek Yoon-ho from the White Tiger Guild and Choi Jong-in from the Hunters Guild. Reporters immediately swarm, questioning whether they're there to recruit Lee Min-sung. Both guild masters swiftly deny any interest, insisting they have other important business. As the guild masters chat, Lim Tae-gyu, guild master of the Reaper Guild, approaches them smugly. Fighting over Min-sung, are we? He teases loudly. Both men snap irritably. We're not here for Lee Min-sung. Oblivious, Lee steps out, basking in attention, mistakenly believing the guild masters are arguing over him. Jinwoo arrives quietly, bewildered by the overwhelming crowd. What's all this commotion? He wonders. Approaching cautiously, he's abruptly blocked by Lee Min-sung's aggressive bodyguard. Can't you see the reporters here? Get lost. The bodyguard snaps rudely. Jinwoo calmly responds, I have business with the association. Lee Min-sung, observing coldly, mutters arrogantly, handle someone insignificant like him quickly. A commanding voice interrupts sternly from behind. On whose authority do you chase away our guest? Chairman Go-gun steps forward confidently, startling everyone. He escorts Jinwoo inside respectfully, leaving reporters murmuring curiously. Who is that man? Lee Min-sung, humiliated, growls furiously to his bodyguard. Find out immediately who that nobody thinks he is. Inside, as Lee tries to enter for his scheduled evaluation, he's firmly blocked by Woo Jin-chul. Another hunter is currently being evaluated, Woo informs coldly. You may enter after 11 o'clock. Lee demands angrily, citing his influential father. Woo removes his glasses calmly, eyes sharp and cold. Mr. Lee Min-sung, would you like me to fully explain who that hunter inside is? Could you handle the consequences? Meanwhile, Chairman Go-gun guides Jinwoo through the hallways. Jinwoo notices Choi and Baek waiting patiently. They've been here over an hour already, the chairman smiles knowingly. It's understandable, considering you're Korea's first new S-rank hunter in 2 years. And after what Choi saw yesterday, he's likely desperate to meet you. Inside the evaluation room, the examiner requests a demonstration of Jinwoo's abilities. Initially, Jinwoo summons a single shadow soldier. Observing raised eyebrows, he sighs quietly. I suppose there's no point hiding anymore. Casually, he calls forth dozens of shadow soldiers, rapidly filling the room. Everyone watches speechless. About 100 more, Jinwoo mentions nonchalantly. Baek, stunned, recalls meeting Jinwoo before. He's changed completely, overwhelming, he thinks, amazed. leaving the evaluation room proudly holding his official S-rank license. Jinwoo is immediately approached by Beck and Choi, eager for discussion. Jinwoo politely declines, saying simply, "I still have something left to do." Choi gently warns, "I wouldn't exit that way if I were you." Outside, Jinwoo is instantly swarmed by reporters, flashes blinding him momentarily. The news rapidly spreads nationwide. At Jinho's school, a friend excitedly announces, "Your brother is on TV." Jinho scoffs skeptically. "Don't joke around. Why would my brother be on TV?" 10 minutes earlier, Lee Min-sung had stood proudly before reporters, confidently declaring, "Even if I'm ranked low, I'll retire as an actor and commit fully to protecting everyone." In reality, he smirked inwardly, knowing he'd secretly been ranked 2 years earlier, planning to join the Reaper Guild for a hefty paycheck without real danger. However, chaos erupted suddenly as reporters received news of the newly discovered S-rank hunter, abandoning Lee immediately. Humiliated, Lee watched helplessly as a reporter nearby cheerfully dictated, "Change tomorrow's headline to, 'The sorrows of an E-rank turn to tears of joy for Korea's 10th S-rank.'" The story fast-forwards again to various reactions as the entire country discusses Jinwoo's astonishing promotion. Among them, Jinho's father urgently questions Jinho. "Did you convince Sung Jin-Woo to join our guild?" Jinho hesitates awkwardly, replying apologetically, "No. He's decided to create his own guild, and asked me to become its vice master." Stunned, his father demands, "Do you understand why I built the Eugene Guild?" Jinho answers cautiously, "Wasn't it for money?" His father's expression darkens thoughtfully, hinting that the true reason may be far deeper than Jinho realizes. Jinho's father shook his head gently, exhaling a slow, disappointed breath. "Jinho, if it were just about money, I already have more than enough. Do you really think I built the Eugene Guild solely to gather a few extra pennies?" His eyes were stern yet full of genuine concern. The reason behind Eugene Guild's creation was always about protection. With hunters steadily becoming more influential, their strength surpasses governments. Already, some so-called nation-level hunters possess power rivaling entire countries, with smaller nations even treating them like royalty. He paused for a moment, carefully observing Jinho's reaction before continuing. "Think about it. How long do you expect the current laws and government authority to protect us if hunters keep growing stronger? That's why I wanted to create a guild composed of trustworthy, honorable hunters. People who aren't driven by greed or personal ambitions. You've already found such a person, and you've passed the test. That's why I've decided to leave Eugene Guild entirely in your hands." His voice softened earnestly. "I want you to nurture it, make alliances with strong and trustworthy hunters. Because soon enough, such people will be more valuable than any wealth." Jinho quietly considered his father's words, gratitude evident in his eyes. But after careful thought, he respectfully declined. "Thank you for entrusting this to me, father. But I've already decided. I want to follow Hyungnim and join his guild." At the same time, Jinwoo stood calmly, completely surrounded by a dense crowd of reporters frantically shouting questions and flashing cameras. Beck hurriedly approached him, whispering urgently, "Hunter Sung, let me guide you through this. The media can be relentless. It'll become exhausting quickly." Before Beck could finish, Jinwoo suddenly vanished from sight, leaving everyone momentarily stunned. In the blink of an eye, he reappeared silently at the far side of the crowd, walking away unnoticed. Beck froze in place, eyes wide with disbelief, as Choi beside him muttered incredulously, "A mage-class hunter with that level of agility?" Beck stood speechless, hands trembling slightly, as realization dawned upon him. "Impossible," he whispered under his breath, shocked and shaken. "During the Red Gate incident, I clearly sensed his strength was below mine. Yet now he's stronger, far stronger. Has he been hiding even more abilities all along?" A disturbing thought arose suddenly, causing him to shudder. Could it be he's not just double-awakened, but a hunter who grows endlessly? Meanwhile, Jinwoo entered an upscale artifact auction house, quietly watching an experienced appraiser examine his orb of avarice. The man's eyes widened dramatically, astonishment clear on his face. "In all my years appraising artifacts, I've never seen a red orb like this. A magical amplification of 100%. Even the most legendary master craftsman can only achieve about half that," he said, fascinated. If Guild Master Choi Jong-in saw this, he'd show up with suitcases full of cash. Curious, he asked Jinwoo carefully, "Where exactly did you find this?" "In a dungeon," Jinwoo replied calmly, giving nothing away. The appraiser eagerly offered, "If you'd like, our auction house can help you sell this at the highest price possible." "I'll consider it," Jinwoo said quietly. However, he was already thinking ahead to clearing the Demon Castle dungeon and crafting the holy water of life to cure his mother. "Do you have artifacts that offer fire resistance?" he asked. "I couldn't find anything suitable online." The appraiser smiled knowingly. "We do have such artifacts. Elemental resistance artifacts are quite expensive, so they're rarely sold openly online." He guided Jinwoo into a private showroom, filled with impressive gear encased behind thin magical glass displays. Jinwoo glanced skeptically at the thin glass. Noticing his doubt, the appraiser explained confidently, "Even if an A-rank hunter hit this glass with full force, it wouldn't break." Joking lightly, he added, "If you somehow manage to break it, the artifact inside is yours for free." Amused but curious, Jinwoo lightly readied himself to test the glass. But the appraiser quickly sensed his overwhelming presence and immediately interrupted nervously. "Please wait. It was just a joke. If the glass breaks, it triggers an alarm, and the Hunters Guild veterans guarding us will arrive instantly." The appraiser's heart was pounding nervously, thinking, "I was sure he was a mage-class hunter. How is his aura this overwhelming?" Deciding against pressing further, Jinwoo shifted his interest, asking instead about daggers. Another attendant quickly showed him their collection, and Jinwoo immediately noticed how superior his current equipment was compared to these overpriced items. Curious, he handed over his own dagger and asked, "How much would this fetch?" The attendant carefully examined it, his eyes widening in surprise. "This detailed craftsmanship would fetch at least 100 million won." Jinwoo quietly concealed his surprise. This dagger he'd bought for just 2.8 million gold from the system store was worth far more than he'd imagined. He wouldn't need to sell the precious orb after all. Elsewhere, Beck sat alone in his office, restlessly haunted by the realization he'd made earlier. "A hunter who can grow endlessly?" he murmured, deeply troubled. "My eyes, even in beast form, accurately sensed he was weaker than me at the Red Gate. Yet, he's grown unimaginably stronger since." The implication left Beck unsettled. Of course, someone like him wouldn't join an existing guild. It'd only hold him back. Outside Jinwoo's apartment, reporters along with Beck's assistant Kichiol were patiently waiting, desperate to recruit him. From the window above, Jinwoo's sister nervously watched, quietly ducking away when she was spotted. "Should I ask them to leave?" Jinwoo offered, visibly annoyed. "Don't," she quickly said worriedly. "You're already being criticized online for ignoring reporters. It'll just make things worse." Suddenly, someone knocked loudly at the door, prompting Jinwoo to angrily confront the intruder. Opening the door, he saw a tearful Jinho standing miserably. "Hyungnim, my father kicked me out," he sobbed dramatically. Jinwoo stared blankly, unmoved. "Weren't you living alone?" "Technically, yes," Jinho sniffled. "But the apartment was under my father's name. Can I stay here just for a bit?" Without hesitation, Jinwoo closed the door firmly, causing Jinho to protest weakly. Inside, his sister asked curiously, "Who was it?" "No one," Jinwoo calmly replied. "Never seen him before in my life." Back at the Eugene household, Jinho's father suddenly felt dizzy, stumbling slightly. "Why am I seeing double?" he muttered weakly, collapsing to the floor, frightening his wife. Meanwhile, Jinwoo summoned several shadow soldiers, carefully instructing one to guard his sister while he was away clearing the demon castle. Looking at the shadows, he thought carefully, "Even an A-rank hunter can't touch them. My sister should be safe." He summoned even more shadows, commanding softly, "Guard the entire neighborhood quietly. Don't let yourselves be seen." Watching them disperse silently into the darkness, he thought confidently, "With these shadows protecting everyone, this neighborhood will stay peaceful, even if I'm gone." The story shifted forward to the following day as Jinwoo walked with Jinho down a busy street. As they exchanged casual small talk, Jinho awkwardly tried to make the best of his circumstances, remarking, "You know, boss, motel rooms aren't that bad these days. The Wi-Fi's pretty fast." Jinwoo gave him an amused glance and replied calmly, "Just hang in there a bit longer. We'll find a proper guild office soon enough." Upon arriving at their destination, Jinwoo bid Jinho farewell before heading straight for the dungeon. Approaching its ominous gates, he considered carefully, "The difficulty will spike from here, but this time I'm fully prepared." He confidently equipped his newly purchased robe, enchanted with fire resistance, along with an unnamed ring infused with water magic. Feeling ready, Jinwoo advanced through the shimmering portal. Once inside, the system message promptly displayed a new quest: collect a demon's soul by defeating the top-floor boss. Jinwoo skimmed the rewards with interest, noticing a special runestone, Shadow Exchange. This looks even better than last time, he murmured thoughtfully. I already acquired 3 incredible abilities from previous runestones. This should be exciting. Fast-forwarding deeper into the dungeon, Tusk stood powerfully before a horde of fierce demons. Grasping the Orb of Avarice tightly, Tusk's shadowy form surged in size, amplifying his magical energy exponentially. Charging an immense, scorching attack, he unleashed it with devastating force, instantly obliterating the demons and leaving behind a wide stretch of smoldering ruins. Jinwoo observed, astonished, thinking, even though Tusk became my shadow soldier and lost some strength, with that orb, he's still insanely powerful. He noticed that the orb had adjusted itself perfectly to Tusk's large hand. Jinwoo smirked slightly, deciding to let Tusk keep it for now. The scene then transitioned sharply to a hospital room, where a weary man awoke groggily. It was Jinho's father. The doctor approached him cautiously. You've been asleep for 2 days straight. Concerned, the man responded with strained humor. Must have overworked myself. Did you find anything unusual? Ignoring his question, the doctor pressed anxiously. Do you have any hunters or awakened people close to you? The seriousness in his tone made the man's heart skip a beat. Why are you asking me this? He demanded. The doctor hesitated before explaining gravely. Have you ever heard of eternal slumber? The name alone sent chills down the man's spine. The doctor continued solemnly. Prolonged exposure to magical energy can make certain people fall into an endless sleep. Given your symptoms, I advise staying far from monsters, mana crystals, and anyone emanating magical energy. Jinho's father swallowed nervously, picturing his son and thinking bitterly about the rapidly changing world around him. Grimly, he muttered, the world's moving too fast for me, but I haven't lost yet. Meanwhile, on a quiet coastal island, 2 low-ranked hunters patrolled leisurely. An elderly villager greeted them warmly, glancing curiously at the newcomer among them. As they continued their rounds, the more experienced hunter casually explained, You see, kid, we're the only 2 hunters stationed here. If a dungeon gate pops up, we'd be screwed. Reinforcements would take at least 3 days to arrive. In that time, the village could be wiped out. The young recruit gulped audibly. Just as the older hunter began to reassure him, something unsettling caught his eye, a monstrous figure approaching silently from the distant shore. An ant-like humanoid creature emerged slowly, eyes gleaming ominously in the sunlight, steadily closing the distance toward the unsuspecting hunters. Simultaneously, deep within the dungeon, Jinwoo swiftly ascended through floor after floor, leaving behind countless defeated demons. He stood proudly before his shadow army, thoughtfully assessing their increased numbers. With my intelligence stats boosted, the number of shadows I can maintain has significantly grown, he mused. If only I could extract demon shadows, my army would be unstoppable. Realizing the inefficiency of moving as one massive unit, Jinwoo quickly reorganized his soldiers into 6 specialized groups, each led by his strongest commanders. He firmly instructed them. 1. Split up into your respective teams and eliminate any enemies you encounter. 2. Notify me immediately upon finding the entry permit. Almost immediately after dispatching his troops, Jinwoo felt a steady influx of experience points. Amused, he chuckled lightly. This certainly beats wandering aimlessly. Now the dungeon practically clears itself. Knowing that the toughest battles lay ahead, he stocked up on mana potions, ready to replenish himself as needed. A few days passed swiftly, and soon Tank proudly returned to Jinwoo, visibly stronger, having leveled up 10 times and reaching elite rank. Jinwoo smiled approvingly. Splitting into teams definitely pays off. Not only have my soldiers grown, but I leveled up significantly too. Having rapidly reached the 80th floor, Jinwoo paused thoughtfully, slightly troubled. It's been 2 days since I reached this point, yet there's still no sign of the entry permit. There must be an exceptionally strong enemy hidden somewhere. Just then, his mana started dropping sharply, and he sensed a disturbance far off in the dungeon, a fierce enemy repeatedly annihilating Iron's team. Concerned, Jinwoo withdrew his troops temporarily, preparing for a calculated counterattack. The next morning, he strategized carefully, noticing a troubling pattern. Whoever this enemy is, they're targeting only my weaker shadow units, deliberately avoiding Tusk's stronger group. Carefully cloaked in stealth, Jinwoo watched Tank's team from afar. Soon he spotted the enemy, a regal-looking demon noble, accompanied by 3 formidable demon knights. They swiftly and methodically overwhelmed the shadows, efficiently preventing their regeneration. Realizing the imminent threat, Jinwoo calmly revealed himself, effortlessly dispatching 2 knights before they even realized what was happening. Terrified, the remaining demon noble trembled visibly, eyes wide with fear. Amused, Jinwoo remarked coolly, "Seems even demons can feel fear after all." The noble desperately attacked, but Jinwoo effortlessly evaded each blow. With a swift motion, he shattered the demon's spear, grabbing her roughly by the face, preparing to deliver the finishing blow. But to Jinwoo's surprise, the demon desperately cried out, "I surrender." Startled, he paused mid-motion, wondering wryly, "Is it just me, or are all monsters suddenly bilingual?" Curious, he tore away the demon's mask, revealing a feminine visage staring at him pleadingly. "I'm deeply sorry," she stammered, panicking. "We only sought to protect our territory. We couldn't just watch as you ran rampant, exterminating our brethren like insects. Spare me, please." Jinwoo eyed her skeptically, his voice dryly sarcastic. "You attacked my soldiers relentlessly, and now you're begging me for mercy?" She bowed her head humbly, eyes sincere yet filled with desperation. "Yes, I know it's shameless, but a knight must survive to protect their master. My knights would be relieved as long as I remain alive." Jinwoo stood there, torn between amusement and disbelief, silently contemplating her unexpected request. The air between them grew heavy, as the demon noble anxiously awaited Jinwoo's decision, fully aware her fate rested solely in his hands. After hearing Essel's plea, Jinwoo frowned deeply, thinking, "I've seen my fair share of selfish humans, but a selfish demon? That's new." He sighed and turned away, muttering under his breath, "I don't exactly feel comfortable stabbing something that looks so human-like." Seeing an opportunity, Essel swiftly drew her weapon, preparing to strike Jinwoo. Just as her blade swung downward, a massive magical barrier materialized instantly between them, stopping her attack cold. She stared in disbelief, recognizing Tusk, who had effortlessly protected Jinwoo using his hymn of protection. Jinwoo slowly turned back, his expression unimpressed, and asked calmly, "What exactly did you think you were doing?" Essel fell to the ground, trembling as she begged desperately, "Please forgive me. Spare my life, and I'll give you anything you want." Jinwoo shook his head, marveling sarcastically, is she shameless or overly optimistic? Maybe both. Without hesitation, Tusk used his gravitation magic, lifting Essel effortlessly into the air, leaving her helpless. Looking up at her coldly, Jinwoo asked bluntly, "Where's the entry pass to the next floor?" Terrified, she quickly stammered, "My clan protects the entry pass. If you take me back safely, I promise I'll give it to you." Jinwoo's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Demons guarding the entry pass. No wonder I couldn't find it. It wasn't lost, it was hidden. She hurriedly added, sensing his interest, "I even know where all the higher floor entry permits are kept. Spare me and my clan, and I'll guide you to them." Jinwoo stared at her skeptically. "Tempting," he said calmly, stepping closer until his face was mere inches from hers. Essel blushed involuntarily, confused and flustered, until an overwhelming sense of dread replaced her embarrassment. Jinwoo had activated his bloodlust ability. Leaning closer, voice icy and threatening, he asked softly, "Can I trust you?" Shaking uncontrollably, she squeaked out, "I'm telling the truth, I swear." Satisfied, Jinwoo withdrew his presence and turned, starting to walk away. "Give me the pass, and I'll leave quietly," he said calmly, but paused and glanced back sharply. "Wait, who exactly are you?" The scene abruptly shifted back to the isolated island, where chaos reigned. The mutated ant monster had effortlessly decimated the helpless villagers, evolving wings and gaining strength from every victim. Now fully restored, the creature soared upward, searching relentlessly for its next target. Meanwhile, Essel regained her composure, introducing herself with a dignified tone. "I am Lady Essel, eldest daughter of the noble Raider clan." Jinwoo interrupted dryly, "That's not what I meant." Communicating with demons requires oddly specific wording, he thought with slight irritation. Clearly and deliberately, he asked, "Do you constantly hear voices urging you to kill humans?" Surprised, Essel considered carefully before replying, "No, not kill. The voices only instruct us to protect our territory." Jinwoo pondered deeply. Gate monsters are always instructed to kill humans, yet these dungeon monsters are tasked with defending territory. A troubling thought crossed his mind. Then to them, am I just like a gate monster invading their dungeon? Curiously, he asked her. When exactly did you start hearing these voices? Since the moment we opened our eyes here, Essel answered honestly, and Jinwoo felt a jolt of surprise. So these demons were originally from elsewhere. This could be the clue I need about the system itself. Carefully, he questioned further. Where were you before waking up here? In the demon world, she responded quietly, hesitating briefly. And what exactly were you doing in your world? Jinwoo pressed urgently. As she started to say war, Essel suddenly began glitching violently, her figure distorting uncontrollably. Through the glitching, she gasped painfully. We were preparing for war. Jinwoo's heart raced as he witnessed the same glitch that had interrupted Beruka before. Urgently he asked, who was the enemy you were preparing to fight? But before she could finish, her form flickered again, text abruptly appearing around her, stating clearly, you have surpassed the allowed amount of information. Conversation will be interrupted. Jinwoo's eyes widened. The system itself is forcibly blocking this conversation. Whatever information she's about to reveal is vital. Carefully, he continued. Who is this powerful enemy you're fighting against? She trembled, tried to speak, but glitched violently once more, collapsing weakly. Jinwoo swiftly caught her, thinking deeply. The system is desperate to hide this enemy's identity. If something with transcendent power is behind all this, then they're the key to everything. Far away, the insect-like monster continued its violent rampage. Local hunters desperately tried to stop its advance, but quickly realized its intelligence was frighteningly high. It's specifically targeting healers, one hunter shouted desperately. It knows exactly what it's doing. Watching grimly from a secure room, Wu presented the disturbing footage to Chief Go-Gun-hee and other association members. This mutant ant decimated an entire island within a day, Wu stated gravely. It intelligently targeted healers and A-ranked hunters first. Casualties totaled 294 civilians, 6 hunters dead, and 108 hunters dispatched just to stop it. Murmurs of panic filled the room. If Japan, one of Asia's strongest hunter nations, took such heavy losses, Korea has no chance, someone muttered worriedly. Chief Go-Gun-hee frowned deeply, stating with authority, this island is only 150 kilometers from Jeju Island. If these ants can fly, they can easily reach our mainland. We can't protect every island. Our resources are too thin. Realizing the gravity, Go-Gun-hee considered grimly, who would even help Korea if things escalate. China, Russia. He shook his head bitterly, recalling how the United States refused aid when the S-rank gate first opened years ago. After the meeting, Wu privately approached Chief Go-Gun-hee, whispering urgently, there's something else. Hunter Huang Dong-Su from the Scavenger Guild contacted us secretly, offering his help. Chief Go-Gun-hee scoffed. His intentions are painfully obvious, Hunter Jinwoo. Wu nodded, adding solemnly, we've also been contacted by someone even more significant, a nation-level hunter. Back in the dungeon, Essel slowly awakened, blinking groggily. How long was I asleep? She mumbled, confused. Jinwoo, unimpressed, remarked calmly, I guess demon camaraderie isn't a thing, pointing at a pile of demon corpses nearby. Your own kind attacked you while you slept. Eyes widening, Essel realized the truth, staring at him in amazement. Did you protect me? She asked, shocked. She rose to her feet shakily, bowing deeply. Thank you. Lesser demons never consider intelligent demons as allies. Jinwoo shrugged dismissively, eager to move forward. Enough. Where's that entry permit? Time passed swiftly, and soon Essel led Jinwoo toward a massive castle surrounded by roaring flames. A demon castle inside another demon castle? Jinwoo remarked wryly. This place seriously has layers. As they entered, Essel introduced Jinwoo confidently to the guards. Her father, seated on his throne, glanced up dismissively, then suddenly leapt to his feet, panicking. Essel, who on earth did you bring here? An honored guest, father, she protested weakly. An honored guest? He shouted furiously. What guest arrives with an entire army concealed in his shadow? Essel turned pale, realizing in horror that hidden behind Jinwoo, his formidable army silently lurked, invisible yet terrifyingly real, waiting patiently in the darkness. Jinwoo stood silently under the wary gaze of the demon noble, impressed by his perception. To think he could sense my hidden soldiers. Guards circled cautiously, their weapons drawn, yet Jinwoo showed no sign of concern. I have no intention of causing harm, he spoke calmly, clearly. I only need the entry permit. After that, I'll leave quietly. The demon noble's sharp eyes narrowed thoughtfully. This is the human rapidly ascending the floors, obliterating entire clans overnight. Vulcan Metis, he made quick work of them. Judging his clan's relative weakness, the noble quickly understood the futility of confrontation. After an uneasy silence, he finally spoke with restrained politeness. If we give you the entry permit, will you truly leave without further conflict? One more thing, Jinwoo replied, unintentionally casual as he grasped Essel's wrist, drawing her forward gently. I also need to borrow your daughter for a while. The noble's face instantly darkened, eyes blazing with rage, prompting Jinwoo to reconsider his wording. Wait, did I phrase that wrong? An awkward moment stretched between them until the noble reluctantly invited him to sit. Moments later, the unlikely trio, Jinwoo, Essel, and her anxious father, sat stiffly around an ornate dining table. The noble eventually broke the silence, a touch of lingering suspicion in his voice. So you're saying that your only demands are the entry scroll and Essel's guidance? Nothing else? Realizing the misunderstanding, Jinwoo quickly clarified with a respectful nod. Correct. I mean her no harm. She's just a guide. The noble visibly relaxed, but caution remained. His voice softened, paternal worry unmistakable. Do you promise my daughter's safety? Jinwoo observed him carefully, a faint smile appearing as he thought, a demon worried about family. How strangely human. Meeting the noble's eyes, he spoke firmly. I keep my promises. The noble, now reassured, gestured to a servant, who swiftly presented the entry scroll. Jinwoo confirmed its authenticity and then glanced at Essel. Can you depart immediately? She nodded, visibly determined. A system notification promptly appeared, informing Jinwoo that Essel had requested a party formation. Intrigued, he accepted, noting silently, just stay back in battles, let me handle everything. Ascending together, Jinwoo noticed Essel's hesitation, glancing back occasionally toward the previous floor. Curious, he asked, are you all right without your mount? She replied shyly. Only party members can access the movement circle. My horse had to stay behind. She then paused abruptly, rummaging through her bag. Wait, my father prepared gifts to smooth negotiations with other clans. Jinwoo interrupted gently, slightly amused. Negotiations? Are you friendly with the other clans? She shook her head earnestly. Friendly isn't the word. We've constantly competed over status, but we're not exactly enemies. In that case, he smiled faintly, eyes glinting, there's no need. Wait here, I won't be long. As Jinwoo moved towards the looming castle gates, Essel watched his back, heart uneasy, uncertain whether he planned diplomacy or destruction. Meanwhile, across town in the Korean Hunter Association's headquarters, Chairman Go-Gun-hee faced the formidable figure of America's nation-level hunter. The large man's voice, brimming with confidence, boomed. So where is Hunter Jinwoo right now? Chairman Go sighed inwardly, replying tactfully. His exact location remains elusive even to us. He moves independently. The American nodded knowingly, mentioning Hunter Huang's earlier misconduct with a dismissive laugh. I came here to suggest you deny entry to Huang, but you've handled that nicely. As he rose to leave, he turned briefly, his tone calculated. Regarding Jeju Island, Korea seems troubled. I'd offer my help, but, his lips curled into a smug grin, my services are expensive. The chairman watched him exit, a faint scowl forming. Nation-level hunters aren't cheap, or humble apparently. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo methodically ascended higher floors. Battles became mere moments. Enemies swiftly dispatched, his level steadily climbing to 87. He received a sudden system alert. Permission granted. Igris and Tank ready for advancement. As shadow engulfed both soldiers, Jinwoo watched expectantly. Moments later, Igris and Tank emerged dramatically enhanced, power radiating from their strengthened forms. He smiled approvingly. Looks like the battlefield's about to become much simpler. Soon Essel approached hesitantly, voice respectful. Sir. Don't call me sir, Jinwoo interjected gently. Embarrassed, Essel asked quietly. Do you realize how many clans you've destroyed already? 9, Jinwoo replied evenly, unfazed. Essel hesitated, worry apparent. From floor 90 onwards, the nobles grow drastically stronger. Perhaps negotiations might be wise, like you did with my clan. He turned toward her thoughtfully. If I were weaker, would your clan have negotiated with me? She blinked silently, recognizing his point. Precisely, Jinwoo said calmly, almost reassuringly. Didn't you mention clans constantly compete for ranks? Well, I've just boosted your clan to first place. Essel corrected shyly. It's Radairu clan, by the way. Noticing her awkward expression, he asked quietly. Curious why I spared your clan? She blushed faintly, nodding. He shrugged casually, turning away slightly embarrassed himself. Because I liked your honesty. Her face immediately flushed bright red, misunderstanding entirely, while Jinwoo silently chastised himself. Why does it feel like I keep adopting overly enthusiastic companions? First Jinho, now this demon girl. Far away, at Incheon International Airport, Japan's S-rank powerhouse, Goto stepped off his private jet, pausing immediately, eyes narrowing suspiciously. There's someone strong here. His assistant hesitated skeptically. Someone surpassing you? Impossible. Soon after, at the Hunter Association building, Chairman Go greeted Goto respectfully. Goto's translator promptly relayed his words. Japan can no longer overlook Jeju Island. We suggest a joint operation, combining our elite forces. The chairman paused gravely. Your hunters are undoubtedly skilled, but the risks are enormous. Jeju Island is beyond dangerous. Goto smiled confidently, eyes sharp, voice calm. When united, no enemy is too dangerous. We will reclaim Jeju. Yet beneath his calm exterior, a faint unease lingered. Remembering the powerful aura he'd felt at the airport, Goto's instincts warned him that more than mere ants awaited them on Jeju Island. Goto calmly listened to Chairman Go Gunhee's concerns and, with a confident nod, signaled his assistant to present their detailed strategy. Since we're dealing with an S-rank gate, we've carefully prepared for it, he explained smoothly. As documents exchanged hands, Goto leaned in, his tone becoming more earnest. Each ant individually rivals an A-rank hunter in strength, but they have a crucial weakness, their lifespan. Ants naturally die within 1 year. If we eliminate just the queen, the entire colony will vanish naturally after a year, reclaiming Jeju Island without unnecessary casualties. Chairman Go considered this carefully, the idea slowly taking hold. It sounded plausible, yet he remained cautious. Targeting the queen might seem simpler, he said thoughtfully. But ants defend their queen with unmatched fervor. Wouldn't killing one queen be as challenging as wiping out thousands of soldier ants? Goto leaned back, confident but respectful. It's true. Thousands will defend her fiercely. However, we've studied previous incursions. On 3 separate occasions, your Korean hunters landed on Jeju Island. Each time, nearly all ants abandoned their tunnels to attack the invading hunters. He leaned forward again, emphasizing the point. This behavior is what we intend to exploit. Intrigued, Chairman Go raised an eyebrow. How exactly? Goto smiled calmly, laying out their ambitious plan. 10 of the 11 S-rank hunters from my guild, including myself, will lure the ants out, diverting them from the queen. My team will split into separate groups and attack from multiple directions, drawing nearly every soldier ant away from the nest. With their defense weakened, your Korean hunters can infiltrate, eliminate the queen, and escape by helicopter. The chairman absorbed Goto's words, impressed but still cautious. This approach seemed viable, but something felt off. He wondered quietly. Why would Goto and Japan's top hunters willingly place themselves at risk? What's the hidden agenda? Unbeknownst to the chairman, Goto himself was lost in contemplation. This raid was not mere charity. It was a stepping stone towards his ambition to become a nation-level hunter. Defeating an S-rank gate publicly, especially alongside Korea, would secure his reputation globally. It wasn't about alliances. It was about personal glory, a path he had chosen despite knowing its questionable morality. Chairman Go finally broke the silence. Japan has 10 S-rank hunters committed, but Korea has only 6 available active S-rank hunters. Such a mission requires perfect coordination. Yet, as he spoke, the chairman quietly reflected on Jinwoo, the man who single-handedly cleared an A-rank dungeon. Perhaps if Jinwoo joined them, success might not just be possible, it could be inevitable. With newfound confidence, he promised Goto, "We'll thoroughly review your proposal and present a clear operational plan soon." Meanwhile, deep inside the demon castle, Jinwoo and Essel stood upon the threshold of the 100th floor. The air around them grew dense, charged with a power that set Jinwoo's senses on edge. Suddenly, a massive wyvern descended, and atop it sat Demon King Baron himself, his fierce aura flooding the chamber. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed in recognition of the immense threat, an opponent unlike any he'd faced before. Essel trembled beside him, overwhelmed by the monstrous aura radiating from Baron. "What is this terrifying bloodlust?" she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. Sensing Essel's fear, Jinwoo calmly assessed the wyvern. Flying opponents always complicated things, but he spotted an advantage. The wyvern wasn't a true demon, making its shadow ripe for extraction. But before Jinwoo could strategize further, Baron raised his arm, activating his spell, Hell's Army. In an instant, the ground trembled violently as countless demonic portals opened, spewing forth a vast legion of demon knights and generals. Jinwoo scanned the battlefield with cold precision. Over 1,000 high-ranking monsters surrounded them, each capable of annihilating entire parties of hunters. As Essel panicked, Jinwoo stood unmoved. "Not yet," he murmured softly, waiting for the perfect moment. When the demon army surged toward him, he unleashed his ability without hesitation. Domain of the Monarch. His shadow soldiers exploded forth, skewering countless demons as weapons erupted from darkness. Essel stood wide-eyed, speechless at Jinwoo's sheer power. His strongest shadows, Tusk, Igris, Iron, and Tank, charged into battle, effortlessly slaughtering any demon brave enough to approach. Tusk's flames blazed fiercely, incinerating entire battalions with ease, bolstered by the Orb of Avarice. Yet, amidst the chaos, Baron lifted his weapon skyward, calling down devastating lightning bolts that obliterated Jinwoo's army in seconds. Shielding Essel with his cloak, Jinwoo analyzed quickly. "An AoE lightning attack capable of paralysis," he noted grimly. "If I don't stop him soon, I'll run out of mana." Seizing an opening, Jinwoo lunged toward Baron, aiming for the wyvern's wings to ground his foe. Yet, Baron intercepted the strike effortlessly, slamming Jinwoo into the earth with bone-shattering force. The impact cratered the floor, nearly stunning him. Before Jinwoo could regain his footing, Baron unleashed another lightning-infused strike. But at that critical moment, Tusk intervened heroically, redirecting the flames upward. The attack collided spectacularly with the wyvern's wing, grounding Baron. Jinwoo smiled faintly. Giving Tusk that orb was definitely worth it. As Baron stood again, enraged and now vulnerable, Jinwoo taunted confidently. "Finally tired of hiding up there?" Baron rushed forward, unleashing brutal attacks, each strike lethal. Tusk desperately shielded Jinwoo, but his mana dwindled dangerously fast. Recognizing the dire situation, Jinwoo summoned Iron and Igris, now evolved and stronger than ever, to engage Baron directly. Yet, the Demon King was merciless. He shattered Iron's axe effortlessly and struck Igris down brutally, his power overwhelming even their evolved forms. As Baron seized Jinwoo, lifting him by the throat for the final blow, Igris and Iron, determined despite their wounds, rallied one final stand to block Baron's blade. Grasping the chance, Jinwoo struck repeatedly, his dagger piercing Baron's flesh. Furious, the Demon King unleashed an explosive AoE attack, obliterating the remaining shadows and tearing Jinwoo's cloak to tatters. Exhausted yet undaunted, Jinwoo prepared himself, breathing heavily. Even stripped of his shadows, he still had one advantage: determination. As Jinwoo staggered to his feet, his vision blurred, yet adrenaline pumped fiercely through his veins. The Demon King Baron stood before him, manifesting new weapons that glowed ominously, signaling their final confrontation. With a deep breath, Jinwoo tightened his grip on his daggers and dashed forward, the air rippling around him. The two clashed violently, sparks bursting from the collision of their weapons, echoing throughout the entire chamber. Despite Jinwoo's swift and precise strikes, Baron matched him effortlessly blow for blow. Frustrated, Jinwoo saw an opening and thrust his dagger forward using Vital Strike. But Baron's reflexes were faster, blocking it again with daunting ease. In a rapid exchange of attacks, their movements blurred into a violent dance of steel and shadows, each strike pushing the other to their limits. Suddenly, the Demon King changed tactics, charging an attack at close range, catching Jinwoo completely off guard. Barely managing to block, Jinwoo's daggers trembled under the immense pressure and finally shattered, scattering fragments everywhere. He stood there defenseless, shock surging through him as Baron launched another deadly strike, certain of his victory. Yet, in that desperate moment, Jinwoo's eyes flared fiercely. He seized Baron's arms with bare hands, his body trembling under the colossal strength of the Demon King. Astonished, Baron hesitated briefly, startled by Jinwoo's immense physical strength. Yet, with a sinister grin, Baron began charging another devastating spell at point-blank range. Jinwoo's heart raced. Was there truly no limit to Baron's power? But just as the attack was about to end Jinwoo's life, a sharp whistle sliced through the air, followed by a heavy impact. Baron staggered backward, bewildered. A spear lodged deeply into his shoulder. Jinwoo quickly glanced back, surprised yet relieved to see Essel standing bravely in the distance, determination burning in her eyes. Seizing the distraction, Jinwoo summoned every ounce of remaining strength. Combining his extraordinary strength stat with Dominator's touch, he gripped Baron's limbs and, with a thunderous roar, tore them from the Demon King's torso. Before Baron could even process his pain, Jinwoo struck upward with a crushing uppercut. The Demon King's form cracked violently, his body splintering apart into fragments and then scattering like dust across the chamber floor. Silence settled in the aftermath, broken only by Jinwoo's ragged breathing. Essel approached hesitantly, eyes wide with amazement. Exhausted yet triumphant, Jinwoo flashed her a faint smile. "Looks like your radish clan finally reached the top," he joked weakly, earning a frustrated glare. "My clan's name is Radairu," Essel corrected fiercely, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. After taking time to recover, Jinwoo meticulously gathered items scattered across the final floor. He held up the Demon Monarch's ring, feeling immense satisfaction as he slipped it onto his finger, activating the complete set effects. Finally, he stared at the vial containing the purified blood of Baron, the final component he needed to craft the holy water of life. Taking a deep breath, Jinwoo began crafting, nerves tense with anxiety. As a notification explained the success depended heavily on his intelligence, Jinwoo mentally scolded himself. "Had I known, I'd have put every point into intelligence." "It'll be fine," Essel reassured softly, sensing his worry. "After all, it's you." As the countdown ended, Jinwoo exhaled sharply. The crafting had succeeded, yielding 6 vials of holy water. He examined the leftover ingredients, noticing the spring water had been completely used. Clutching the vial carefully, he thought of his mother and whispered to himself, "Will this truly cure her?" The thought filled him with both hope and dread. Distracting him from his concerns, Iron proudly approached, dragging the enormous body of the defeated wyvern. Jinwoo chuckled warmly, patting Iron's massive shoulder affectionately. "You're really getting into this collecting habit, aren't you?" As he summoned the wyvern's shadow, Essel gasped at Jinwoo's surreal ability. He shrugged casually. "Demons can't become shadows, but wyverns, well, they're fair game." He paused, trying to recall the beast's name. Noticing his struggle, Essel rolled her eyes. "For someone so strong, you really suck at names." With a sheepish grin, Jinwoo settled for a name. Kaisel. "With this wyvern, we can easily return to Raider," Essel said enthusiastically. But Jinwoo, recalling his newly acquired shadow exchange ability, shook his head. "I've got somewhere I need to be right away." Essel's excitement faltered. "There's supposed to be a celebration at my clan." Jinwoo gently interrupted, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry, Essel. I'll see you again when I can." Activating Shadow Exchange, he vanished instantly, leaving behind a confused shadow soldier who glanced around helplessly. Back in Korea, Chairman Go Gun-hee and Chief were analyzing satellite data, fully confirming Goto Ruji's claim that the ants left their nests unguarded during previous raids. But mid-discussion, Chairman Go suddenly jolted upright, his face pale. "Did you feel that?" he whispered urgently. Elsewhere, S-rank hunters Choi Jong-in and Baek Yoon-ho also paused, feeling the sudden spike in mana. Baek, sharing drinks with retired healer Min Byung-gu, felt a deep unease stir within him. Min chuckled, misreading Baek's tension. "Relax, man. Keep frowning like that. You'll get wrinkles faster than monsters invade." Baek sighed, taking a long sip. Min had retired with all limbs intact, rare among hunters. Now he aspired to a peaceful life teaching history, wanting to leave behind the violence of hunting. Baek felt a pang of envy. Min's ambitions were simple, human. Min leaned forward earnestly. "Wouldn't life be better if wars only existed in history books?" Baek smiled bitterly. "You're the normal one here. We're the twisted ones, constantly craving battles." Across town, Jinwoo arrived swiftly at the hospital. His mother's room was quiet, bathed in dim moonlight. Approaching her bedside, fear surged within him, hands shaking as he lifted the potion to her lips. He hesitated, a memory rushing back, the burn scar on her neck from his childhood mistake. Tears blurred his vision. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered softly, praying that this would finally end her suffering. Gently, he helped her swallow the holy water of life, holding his breath. Moments ticked painfully slow. Suddenly, her pale skin regained warmth, her breathing steadied, yet her eyes remained closed. Panic stabbed Jinwoo's heart, his confidence crumbling instantly. "Mom, please," he begged desperately, his voice trembling. "Open your eyes." Yet silence answered him. Grief-stricken, Jinwoo sank beside her, clasping her frail hand tightly, tears falling freely now. "You've carried our burdens alone for far too long," he whispered softly. "Let me shoulder them now." He knelt there in the silence, promising quietly, fiercely, that he would carry on her strength, no matter how heavy the cost. The story gently shifts to Jinwoo's sister, Jinho, who was attempting to study but found her thoughts drifting elsewhere. Frustrated, she decided a short walk to the store might clear her head. As soon as she stepped outside, a warm breeze brushed past her, making her pause. She tilted her head slightly, feeling the warmth, and whispered quietly, "Is summer already here?" before continuing down the street, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Jinwoo sat beside his mother's bedside, shoulders slumped as hope began to fade. Uncertainty lingered in his heart, heavier than he had ever felt before. But just as despair began to grip him, something incredible happened. His mother's eyes gently fluttered open. Her gaze slowly focused on Jinwoo, surprise flickering across her face. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Is that you, Jinwoo? How long have I been asleep?" Jinwoo's throat tightened, struggling against the surge of emotions as he answered gently. "It's been 4 years, Mom." A tender silence stretched between them before she spoke again, her voice trembling slightly. "And Jinho? Is she all right?" He nodded reassuringly, fighting back tears. "Yes, Mom. She's perfectly fine." His mother reached out weakly, gripping his hand gently, her touch as warm and comforting as ever. "Thank you, Jinwoo. You kept your promise to me, didn't you? It must have been so hard on you," she whispered, her eyes soft with gratitude and affection. Unable to contain the surge of emotion anymore, Jinwoo lowered his head, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. All those sleepless nights and painful battles felt suddenly worth it, just to witness this one moment. Elsewhere in the hospital, a doctor stood frozen in disbelief as he listened to the nurse's report. "What do you mean the patient with eternal sleep woke up?" "That's impossible," he murmured in astonishment. When informed that the guardian had requested immediate discharge, his astonishment turned into firm refusal. "This patient has been unconscious for 4 years. She won't even be able to stand, let alone leave." But the nurse firmly replied, "Doctor, the patient is already walking and talking as if nothing happened. It's unprecedented." Stunned, the doctor shook his head, muttering quietly, "We need to inform research institutions immediately." Yet the nurse explained hesitantly, "The guardian asked for complete discretion. He has special circumstances." The doctor's curiosity piqued, asking, "Who is the guardian?" Sung Jin-Woo, Korea's newly appointed 10th S-rank hunter. Hearing the name, the doctor's expression changed instantly. With a resigned sigh, he replied, "Then we have no choice but to comply. Prepare the discharge immediately." Soon after, Jinho burst into the hospital room, eyes wide in disbelief. Seeing her mother awake and smiling gently, she froze in place. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over as she rushed forward, throwing herself into her mother's open arms. "Mom, you've missed so much," Jinho sobbed quietly, her voice muffled in her mother's comforting embrace. Observing his family together again, Jinwoo felt warmth spreading through his heart, realizing with quiet satisfaction, "Everything I've endured, every step I've taken, it was all for this moment." Yet, even amidst the joy, a shadow lingered. Having crossed paths with power and danger far beyond ordinary comprehension, Jinwoo knew how fragile this peace truly was. Later that evening, Jinwoo sat alone in the dimly lit living room, staring thoughtfully at his phone. Ignored calls filled the screen, and he shrugged lightly, murmuring with faint amusement, "If it's really important, they'll call again." Scrolling through news reports, a headline caught his eye, prompting an ironic smile. "Dragon-like creature spotted flying over Seoul." He muttered softly, shaking his head. "Even Kale makes headlines these days?" Suddenly, his phone rang again. Recognizing the number, he quickly answered. "Chairman Go Gun-hee?" The chairman's voice was unusually tense. "Hunter Jinwoo, there is something we must urgently discuss. Perhaps you've already heard." Guessing the reason, Jinwoo quickly interjected apologetically. "I'm sorry about the wyvern incident. I'll keep Kale under better control next time." "No," the chairman interrupted firmly. "It's something else entirely." After a brief pause, his voice deepened with seriousness. For days from now, we're assembling a team to reclaim Jeju Island and eliminate the ants. For this mission, we need powerful S-rank hunters like you. Taking back Jeju is the wish of every citizen. Would you lend your strength? Jinwoo hesitated thoughtfully, contemplating quietly. Jeju Island, a place filled with high-level monsters. Normally, that would mean easy leveling, but things have changed now. His eyes drifted toward the bedroom where his family now peacefully slept. Before he could respond, a powerful magical energy suddenly brushed against his senses, causing him to flinch slightly. "Are you all right?" Chairman Go asked cautiously, noticing his silence. Jinwoo refocused instantly, replying calmly, "I sense powerful magic nearby. Hunters fighting." The chairman chuckled softly, explaining, "Indeed. Several S-ranks are currently training in our gym. With only a few days left before the raid, even Japan's top hunter, Goto, has joined them." Interest sparked in Jinwoo's voice. "Goto, Japan's most powerful hunter?" "Yes," Chairman Go confirmed. "Would you like to observe?" Soon after, Jinwoo found himself watching from afar as Baek sparred intensely against a robust older man named Ma Dongwook. Their clash produced ripples of energy, sending pulses of mana throughout the training hall. Beside him, Chairman Go quietly observed, noting, "The mana you felt earlier likely originated from these two." Jinwoo watched intently, observing Baek struggle slightly. From nearby, another familiar voice casually commented, "Hunter Baek isn't even trying right now. If he unleashed his true strength, Ma Dongwook wouldn't last." Jinwoo glanced sideways, recognizing Choi Jong-in, who smiled warmly. "Long time no see, Hunter Jinwoo." Choi gestured to Ma Dongwook, explaining briefly, "That's Ma Dongwook, the famed guild master and S-rank hunter." Jinwoo, intrigued, asked quietly, "Then why isn't Baek fighting seriously? Why hide his strength?" Choi sighed knowingly, "Because people are watching. When Baek fights seriously, he becomes monstrous. He prefers avoiding that side publicly." He continued, introducing the observing Japanese hunters, naming them methodically, ending with emphasis, and finally Goto himself. Goto, sensing Jinwoo's presence, discreetly inquired to Hankawa beside him. "Who's that hunter?" She calmly responded, "Hunter Jinwoo, recently promoted to S-rank. Officially listed as a mage type." Goto's eyebrows rose skeptically. "Mage type? Impossible. With that concealed presence, he's undoubtedly an assassin." She shook her head firmly. "No, it's confirmed information." Across the room, Taekyu whispered to Cha Hae-in, "Look, Hunter Jinwoo's here." Cha subtly glanced in Jinwoo's direction, intrigued yet calm. Meanwhile, Kei, sensitive to strong energies, murmured irritably to Ishida, "All these S-ranks crowded here make me nauseous." He glanced briefly at Cha, who calmly covered her nose with a handkerchief. Kei chuckled inwardly, thinking humorously, "If that's enough for her, I'm definitely the superior censor." Suddenly, a commotion caught everyone's attention. Park Jong-soo was confronting Hankawa aggressively. Jinwoo and Choi shared an amused glance as Choi smirked slightly. "Looks like things are getting interesting." Park confidently proposed a simple challenge to Hankawa, clearly annoyed. "Whoever grabs the other's wrist first wins. Care to back up your talk?" She sneered lightly, mocking his stance. "Is that your idea of a ready position?" Park replied casually, "Don't worry about me. Just come." She lunged forward with blinding speed, expecting an easy win, but to everyone's surprise, Park swiftly dodged, eyes glinting with quiet confidence. Hankawa's eyes narrowed, frustration bubbling inside her as Park Jong-soo effortlessly dodged her attack. Furious, she snapped inwardly, "That arrogance. I'll crush it right now." But as she lunged again, he simply pushed her aside, sending her staggering backward. Park Jong-soo chuckled casually, mocking lightly, "That wasn't a hit, I merely pushed you a little. You do understand the difference, right?" She scowled, struggling to hide her embarrassment. "I can't understand dialects well," she retorted, attempting to maintain dignity. "And stop trying to act cool. Your pose isn't impressive, especially after you've managed to tear your pants." Her words distracted Park Jong-soo momentarily, providing Hankawa the opening she'd wanted. She surged forward again, confident this time. Yet, to her astonishment, before she even fully realized it, Park Jong-soo had effortlessly seized her wrist. He smiled slyly, leaning closer. "You're slow, translator." Hankawa froze, bewildered and humiliated. Calmly, Park Jong-soo continued, "You're used to hiding behind tanks, aren't you? Your moves scream inexperience. In Korea, there's more at stake than fighting monsters. We're constantly facing real threats. Unlike monsters, humans anticipate, plan, and deceive to survive. If I'd had a knife just now, it would have been your throat, not your wrist. The gym fell briefly silent after Park Jong-soo's words. Goto broke the quiet tension with an appreciative nod, remarking politely, "Thank you for the impressive demonstration, Hunter Park." Turning towards Hankoa, Goto instructed quietly, "Translate my words clearly." Raising his voice so everyone could hear, he proposed firmly, "To build greater trust before the Jeju raid, I suggest we have a similar friendly duel, this time between our S-rank hunters. The same rules as before." Chairman Go Gun-hee, observing carefully, understood Goto's intent, to gauge the skills of the Korean hunters before entrusting their lives to them. He nodded in agreement, adding thoughtfully, "Very well, but let's exclude non-combatants, like mage-class hunters, to avoid injuries." Beck stepped forward, adding with quiet confidence, "And let's include another rule. Aside from grabbing wrists, knocking an opponent onto their back counts as victory too. And it will be team-based, 4 against 4. Goto nodded approvingly as Hankoa translated. Internally, he analyzed, wrist-grabbing favors assassin-type hunters. Baek Yoon-ho knows exactly what he's doing. Quickly, teams were decided. Baek Yoon-ho, Ma Dong-wook, Cha Hae-in, and Lim Tae-gyu represented Korea. Opposing them were Japan's Tanaka Kenzo, Hoshino Minoru, Kumamoto Atsushi, and Kei. Watching from the sidelines, Jinwoo observed quietly, noting that Goto himself wasn't participating. Smart move. He's using this opportunity to study our hunters' skills from afar. Luckily, I came. It's rare to witness so many S-rank hunters sparring at once. The match commenced intensely. Tanaka Kenzo immediately charged at Ma Dong-wook, exhilaration flashing in his eyes as he admired Ma's powerful transformation. "Men should always fight with their fists," he roared passionately, and their clash sent shockwaves rippling across the gym. Nearby, Lim Tae-gyu faced off nervously against Hoshino Minoru. Hoshino dashed forward with lightning speed, making Tae-gyu think anxiously, "He must be confident up close, but that's my weakness. Distance attacks are my specialty." Instantly, Tae-gyu summoned mana, unleashing a barrage of long-range attacks. Hoshino narrowly avoided the first strike, but the projectiles shattered the reinforced floor, startling Chairman Go. The chairman sighed deeply, whispering under his breath. This facility was reinforced using the best magical gems. To damage it in mere seconds, just how powerful are these young hunters? Simultaneously, Beck faced Kumamoto Atsushi. Fear flickered briefly in Kumamoto's eyes. "Baek Yoon-ho, if he gets hold of me, he'll snap my bones without hesitation. Rules don't matter anymore. Survival is key." Kumamoto vanished momentarily, reappearing behind Beck, ready to strike lethally. Yet, at the critical moment, Kumamoto hesitated. Beck dodged swiftly, noticing Kumamoto's trembling hands. Confused, Beck thought, why hesitate now? Is he scared? Perhaps not all hunters truly crave battle after all. Remembering Min Byung-gu's words, Beck reflected quietly, perhaps we are the abnormal ones. Frustration surged within Beck as realization dawned. "If you intend to test me, Goto," he muttered fiercely, muscles tensing, "I'll show you exactly what you're looking for." With that, Beck fully transformed, his monstrous power surging forth like a storm. Terrified, Kumamoto panicked inwardly, thinking frantically, "I must run." But Beck was already upon him, taunting sharply, "You're more cowardly than expected. What a waste. Your reawakening should have made you exceptional." Meanwhile, Park Jong-soo watched wide-eyed, mumbling nervously, "Compared to these guys, my earlier fight looks like child's play." His assistant quickly reassured, smiling encouragingly, "No, boss, your match was super cool." Suddenly, an explosive crash echoed. Beck spun around, startled to see Ma Dong-wook pinned firmly by Tanaka Kenzo, eliminated from the fight. Hoshino had also swiftly defeated Lim Tae-gyu, pinning him helplessly against the wall. Facing two opponents now, Beck grinned dangerously. "You two think I'm easier prey than Cha Hae-in? Don't underestimate me." Across the arena, Cha fought Kei gracefully. Kei, breathless and overwhelmed, thought desperately, "She's fast. No, it's more than just speed. I can't read her movements at all." He remembered hearing whispers of her nickname, the Dancer, forbidden in her guild due to her embarrassment, but now he understood why it suited her perfectly. With unmatched agility, Cha slipped behind Kei, lightly tapping his back, eliminating him effortlessly. As Cha turned to assist Beck, Kumamoto, consumed by bloodlust, lunged at her back. But without even turning fully, Cha launched a rapid series of punches straight into his face, stunning everyone watching. "Holy," she punched him nearly 14 times, murmured one Japanese hunter in shock. Cha stared blankly at her own fists, embarrassed. "I overdid it again." Shimizu warned cautiously. When Kumamoto loses his temper, his personality completely changes. He can't control himself. Goto turned sharply to Hankawa, instructing urgently. "Stop Kumamoto if someone is about to get seriously injured. We're only testing skills, not causing casualties." Hankawa grimaced slightly, whispering back. "Honestly, you might want to stop him now, or we'll face huge compensation costs." Kumamoto, now enraged, charged toward Cha, who had momentarily let her guard down, preparing a devastating blow. But just before impact, Kumamoto froze in utter disbelief as someone effortlessly blocked his attack. Standing calmly before him was Jinwoo, holding Kumamoto's fist gently yet unyieldingly. Jinwoo smiled faintly, voice calm but authoritative. "I understand it's a competition, but your bloodlust is excessive. I hope you don't mind me intervening." Fury surged in Kumamoto, and he tried again desperately, but Jinwoo reacted instantly, grabbing his wrist firmly and smoothly pinning him onto the ground. Observing from afar, Goto's eyes narrowed sharply in disbelief. Turning urgently toward Hankawa, he demanded, "Are you absolutely certain that Hunter is mage type?" Hankawa nodded slowly, unsettled herself. "That's what official records say. But honestly, if you doubt it, perhaps it's better to confirm yourself." Goto stood silently, staring intently at Jinwoo, intrigued and cautious, realizing perhaps, just perhaps, he'd greatly underestimated this mysterious hunter. Jinwoo calmly turned to Cha, softly but firmly suggesting, "It might be best if the Korean team admits defeat here. Beck is already down, and if I hadn't stepped in just now, you'd be eliminated as well." Cha nodded quietly, embarrassment slightly coloring her expression. At that moment, Hankawa approached Jinwoo politely. "Hunter Goto wishes to speak with you privately." Jinwoo glanced toward Goto, immediately sensing the fierce, almost predatory aura emanating from Japan's strongest hunter. Suppressing a small smile, Jinwoo thought calmly, "It's clear he's testing me. After facing the Demon King, perhaps measuring myself against him would be worthwhile." Goto, irritated by Jinwoo's composed demeanor, glared sharply. "What's so funny?" Hankawa quickly stepped in to relay Jinwoo's response. "Hunter Sung agrees to a match, but he has one condition. He wants you to fight him at full strength." Goto's expression twisted into a smirk of arrogant amusement. "With our S-rank healer, Minoru, here, there's nothing to worry about. I'll end this quickly." His confidence implied the fight's outcome was already certain. The hunters gathered around the gym murmured quietly in surprise. Ma Dongwook chuckled softly, leaning towards Beck. "That's the newly awakened 10th S-rank hunter everyone's buzzing about? He's got nerve," challenging Goto directly. Cha's brow furrowed slightly in concern, remembering the extraordinary strength Jinwoo displayed previously, yet feeling uneasy about Goto's power. Beck noticed her worry and asked gently, "Are you all right around all these hunters?" She looked up distractedly. "You said you know Hunter Sung. Shouldn't you try to stop him?" Beck smiled slightly, his voice quiet with excitement. "Normally, I would. This is Goto, after all. But aren't you strangely excited too? Something tells me Jinwoo might be even stronger than we realize." In the center of the gym, tension rose sharply as Jinwoo and Goto faced off. Without warning, Goto immediately surged forward, his speed nearly invisible, yet Jinwoo gracefully avoided each strike. Calmly observing Goto's growing irritation, Jinwoo thought, "He's certainly different from the other S-ranks. Yet, he's still within my reach." "You're seriously trying to pass yourself off as a mage-class hunter?" Goto growled, frustration sharpening his tone. "Don't mock me. Show me your true abilities." Their movements became faster and sharper, drawing murmurs of disbelief from the onlookers. Cha watched intently, eyes wide with astonishment as she realized Jinwoo isn't just keeping up. He's controlling the rhythm entirely, making Goto dance to his tune. Unable to land a clean strike, Goto finally lost his patience, his aura darkening with deadly intent. He managed to scratch Jinwoo's face, momentarily distracting him. A notification flashed before Jinwoo's eyes. Immense bloodlust detected. In that split second, Goto launched a lethal blow aimed at Jinwoo's head. Yet, when the dust settled, Jinwoo stood firm, holding Goto's fist inches from his face. Silence enveloped the gym, broken only by Jinwoo's calm voice. If I'd been a little slower, I'd have lost my ear. Goto's eyes widened in disbelief. Jinwoo had caught him effortlessly, despite his full-strength strike. Shaken, he demanded, "Are you mocking me? You could have just grabbed my wrist to end this." Jinwoo replied evenly, voice unwavering. "If I'd grabbed your wrist, this match would have ended. But neither of us wants that yet, do we?" Fury consumed Goto. Both hunters charged toward each other, poised for a devastating collision, only to be stopped by Beck and Cha stepping between them, while Hino and Kei held Goto back. A wall of ice summoned hastily by Goto froze the dangerous confrontation in place, allowing tensions to ease slightly. Beck whispered firmly to Jinwoo, "Let's stop now. Goto is critical for the upcoming raid. We can't risk injury." Hinkwa quickly agreed, sighing in relief. "Yes, let's conclude this spar here before things escalate further." As tempers cooled, Beck checked Jinwoo's arm with concern. Jinwoo reassured him casually, "No harm done." Ma Dongwook approached, grinning broadly. "Facing Goto head-on and leaving with only a scratch, you're truly impressive. Our guild would love someone with your physical talents." Across the room, Choi Jong-in interjected lightly, amusement in his voice. "Actually, Hunter Sung is officially a mage-class hunter." Jinwoo quietly laughed to himself, realizing he'd revealed a bit too much of his strength. He glanced around the room, thinking, even with all these powerful hunters, none sensed the shadow soldiers hidden beneath their feet. Not even Goto noticed them. Turning to Chairman Go Gun-hee, Jinwoo decided calmly, "Chairman, regarding that Jeju Island raid you mentioned." Across the room, Hinkwa noticed Goto silently shaking, sweat beading on his forehead. It was the first time she'd ever seen Goto genuinely rattled. Meanwhile, Beck sat quietly in his office later that day, replaying the battle in his mind. Perhaps my intuition was right. Jinwoo is still growing stronger. Recruiting him now may be impossible, but there's always another way. Just then, Beck received a message containing the finalized Jeju Island raid participants list. His eyes widened in confusion. Sung Jin-Woo isn't participating? How could the association leave someone like him out? At the same time, Goto spoke quietly on the phone with Sugimoto Reiji, leader of the Draw Sword Guild. Reiji confidently reassured him, "Even with talented Korean hunters, none match you." Goto hesitated, his voice filled with concern. "I thought the same until today. But this Sung Jin-Woo, he's different." Sugimoto reviewed the participants' list carefully, remarking with mild confusion, "Odd, Sung Jin-Woo's name isn't listed. Regardless, with 16 S-rank hunters, the raid should go smoothly." "You're probably right," Goto replied quietly, relief slowly returning. "I'll update you once the raid begins." Far away, deep within Jeju Island, dark, monstrous figures moved restlessly in shadowed tunnels. A sinister voice echoed through the caverns. "We must leave this island soon. Our young starve, devouring each other. We require stronger soldiers, ultimate warriors to strike fear into our enemies. For the glory of our empire." Back home, Jinwoo watched his mother happily tidying up their apartment, noting how worn the place had become. "Did you hear anything about your father while I was asleep?" she asked softly, holding an old family photo. "No, nothing," he gently lied, unable to reveal his hunter status or the dangers he faced. He knew she waited patiently, hoping his father would one day return. Watching her smile tenderly at the faded photo, he quietly resolved, "As long as she needs me here, I can't leave for Jeju Island." Elsewhere, news broadcasts urgently informed the public about Jeju Island's ant infestation, describing in grim detail how these creatures rapidly evolved, becoming more intelligent, more human-like, with each passing day, raising fears of an unprecedented disaster on the horizon. Some of the ants had evolved enough to walk upright, using their front limbs like human arms. Their heads were noticeably smaller, making their movements quicker and more nimble, and worse yet, they had gained the terrifying ability to fly. After hearing these alarming facts, panic quickly spread. Citizens watching expressed growing fear, voicing concerns that these creatures could now effortlessly cross the sea and reach the mainland. "This raid might be our last chance," murmured one worried official grimly. Amidst the tension, the conversation turned critical, with certain officials openly trash-talking Jinwoo on live television. "I understand why most hunters would want to run away after seeing monsters like that," one remarked bitterly. Another woman added fuel to the fire, pointing out sarcastically that even a retired hunter was brave enough to participate, hinting at Jinwoo's absence. Meanwhile, Jinwoo himself quietly watched the broadcast on his phone. I don't care about what they're saying, he thought calmly, though his expression hardened slightly. But I worry about how all this negativity might affect Gina. As he mulled this over, his phone rang. It was Jinho, excitedly sharing that he'd finally moved out of the motel thanks to his mother's support and had found a promising new space that would serve perfectly as their guild office. Jinwoo agreed to visit, curious about the place Jinho had in mind. Upon arrival, Jinho proudly showcased the new office, pointing out its spaciousness and proximity to Jinwoo's home. Looking around skeptically, Jinwoo commented dryly, "Don't you think this place is a bit too large for just the two of us?" Jinho quickly countered, emphasizing that they would eventually need room for a guild master, vice master, and other members. He also reminded Jinwoo, "To officially start a guild, we need at least 3 people." Jinwoo nodded thoughtfully, wondering if there was anyone suitable he could recruit as a placeholder member. While discussing the future, Jinho suddenly remembered something important. He reached into his pocket and handed Jinwoo a letter. "Boss, someone's looking for you, a foreigner speaking in English," he explained. "They said they'll be staying in Korea until July 12th and hope you'll contact them." Jinwoo examined the letter curiously, briefly wondering who this person could be. Before he could think further, Jinwoo abruptly sensed a troubling presence. His expression darkened. "I need to head back home immediately," he said firmly. Without wasting a moment, he activated his shadow exchange skill, vanishing instantly from the office. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit alley, a terrified girl trembled as a man cornered her. "Make a sound, and I'll kill you," he threatened quietly, a twisted grin on his face. "You already know how many people have died around here." As the girl desperately pleaded for her life, the man seemed to savor her fear, laughing coldly. "That's exactly why I love this neighborhood." Suddenly, a calm, chilling voice echoed behind him. "I also love this neighborhood." Startled, the attacker turned sharply, seeing Jinwoo standing there quietly. Jinwoo studied him carefully. "I'm genuinely curious. Why do you do these things?" The man sneered defiantly. "Are you here to preach to me?" he taunted, stabbing Jinwoo without hesitation. But the smirk quickly vanished when the blade couldn't even scratch Jinwoo's skin. Taking the knife effortlessly from the assailant's hand, Jinwoo made shallow cuts on the man's leg, causing him to collapse in fear and pain. He leaned down and whispered coldly, "Once you give in to that sick feeling, it's difficult to ever go back." He turned to the frightened girl, gently advising, "You should leave quickly before it gets too dark." After she hurriedly left, Jinwoo glanced coldly at the injured attacker on the ground, saying quietly, "Turn yourself in by midnight, unless you want to die." Summoning one of his shadow soldiers, a menacing high orc, Jinwoo calmly instructed it, "Follow him. If he doesn't turn himself in before midnight, dispose of him." Before walking away, he added, almost casually, "For your sake, I hope you hurry. I'm not sure how patient a high orc will be." As he moved away from the scene, Jinwoo silently thought about the upcoming battle, his gaze serious. Tomorrow, the raid on Jeju Island finally begins. Early the next morning, the sky above the sea was filled with helicopters transporting hunters toward Jeju Island. Among the passengers, Goto sat quietly, trembling slightly. He still couldn't shake off the unsettling encounter he'd had with Jinwoo. That feeling, he thought grimly, recalling the chilling moment. It felt exactly like facing death. He clenched his fists, whispering to himself bitterly, "Am I growing weak?" Below, countless ships carrying hunters from various guilds steadily approached the island. On one ship, Park Jong-soo sternly warned his men, "Steel yourselves. If you feel fear, those ants will sense it first and strike immediately. Our guild style is preparedness, so kill without hesitation any ant that dares fly toward us." Elsewhere, Ma Dongwook of the famed guild quietly addressed his vice guild master, sincerely thanking her for handling the guild during his frequent absences. With a heavy heart, he said his farewell, knowing full well the dangers ahead, and prepared to lead his men at the front lines. All around, South Korea's major guilds, the Reapers, White Tigers, and Hunters Guild, assembled, their numbers reaching nearly 5,000 hunters, roughly a tenth of the nation's total awakened population. In one of the helicopters, the atmosphere was tense as an unfamiliar man introduced himself. "I'm an A-rank hunter and a cameraman specializing in broadcasting hunter operations," he explained, sensing their unease. Baek Yoon-ho immediately wondered why Chairman Go Gun he would approve broadcasting such a perilous operation. Reading the mood, Ma Dongwook reassured the cameraman. The association must believe in our success. After all, this could be the public's first and perhaps last chance to see an S-rank raid unfold. Baek turned to Min Byung-gyu, the S-rank healer accompanying them, remarking, "I never imagined you'd come along for this." Min replied wryly, "Without me, you'd be the first one eliminated, rushing in recklessly as usual." Cha Hae-in glanced toward Baek, quietly asking, "Did you meet Hunter Sung Jin-Woo before coming here?" He paused, surprised by the question, but she quickly dismissed her concern. Forget it. At that moment, Ma Dongwook announced solemnly, "We're here." Below them, the ominous coastline of Jeju Island loomed, evoking traumatic memories in Min Byung-gyu, who began trembling uncontrollably. Meanwhile, the Japanese hunters had already landed, moving cautiously through eerily abandoned streets. Finding a cannibalized ant corpse, they realized uneasily that a predator even stronger lurked among the ants. Go contacted each team, confirming their readiness. Receiving affirmations from all, he gave the order to start. Simultaneously, immense mana waves erupted from all corners of the island, drawing the attention of the entire ant colony. As the Korean helicopter approached, ants surged toward it. Choi Jong-in swiftly summoned his flames, calmly destroying multiple targets. "They're stronger now," he commented, before unleashing an even larger attack that obliterated the approaching swarm. Jumping confidently onto the island, Choi announced, "I'll test their strength first." Watching him battle below, Ma Dongwook told Cha, "Choi specializes in fights against multiple opponents. He'll handle this easily." But despite their confidence, Dongwook reminded everyone gravely, "There's no retreat this time. Once we enter the ant caves, we're committed. We have exactly 1 hour to kill the queen before the Japanese team withdraws." With determined expressions, they jumped into the battle, as Rei Sugimoto simultaneously ordered his team to activate electric jamming signals, isolating the ants from their queen. Meanwhile, the rest of the Japanese hunters continued their intense battle, drawing the soldier ants away so the Korean team could proceed to the queen with minimal resistance, knowing the entire operation hinged on their success. Amidst the chaos, Kumamoto was visibly panicking, and Kei sharply warned him, "Get a grip. At this rate, you'll end up as monster food." In contrast, Team C effortlessly tore through the swarm. Akari remarked to Tatsumi, amused, "At this pace, we'll wipe out every soldier before the Koreans even reach the queen." Tatsumi smiled briefly before asking, "Where's Kenzo?" He received a tired sigh in reply, still running wild, acting like a kid again, breaking every ant he finds and clipping the wings of those that dare fly. Nearby, Team D noticed Choi's flames illuminating the distant sky. Kei turned thoughtfully to his companion Yeppy and asked, "If my ice and that man's fire collided, who would come out on top?" Yeppy confidently replied, "I'd put my money on your ice." Elsewhere, Choi sealed the cavern's entrance using his intense flame magic, blocking further entry for any ant reinforcements. Baek looked around solemnly, recalling with bitter irony, "This mountain was once famous for its beauty, now it's nothing more than an oversized ant nest." The hunters faced a confusing maze of tunnels, unsure which path led directly to the queen. Without hesitation, Choi summoned several fireballs and hurled them down each tunnel. Baek, puzzled, asked him sharply, "What's the point of that?" Choi calmly explained, "Think of this as an ant-made labyrinth. If we're careless, we might end up looping back, just like those fireballs returning to us now." Baek's confusion quickly turned to admiration as he realized Choi's intent. The queen must be hiding somewhere deep enough that even explosions can't reach. Far from the battleground, Jinwoo calmly finished his 10-kilometer run, alone on a silent street. He glanced around, noticing the unusual emptiness, and thought, "They've probably started the Jeju raid." With quiet confidence, he mused, "The Korean and Japanese teams have enough firepower. There's no point in me watching unless something completely unexpected occurs." Back in the dark, winding tunnels, the Korean hunters fought fiercely toward their target, swiftly dispatching several guard ants. Taegyu remarked skeptically, "These were supposed to be royal guards? They're not putting up much of a fight." However, a closer look revealed these ants had evolved specifically for guarding the inner tunnels, with dulled eyes adapted to the darkness. Pushing deeper, the team stumbled upon a massive chamber filled with countless eggs. "We've found the breeding grounds," Baek noted grimly, meaning the queen's chamber was likely nearby. Choi prepared his flames again, but Cha quickly interrupted him, noticing something far more alarming. A a giant egg, cracked open in the center. Min Byung-yu stepped back nervously, muttering, "There's no way a normal ant came from something that size." Beck urged them forward firmly. "Focus on killing the queen, ignore everything else for now." Outside, Team C had regrouped. Ari noticed Kenzo returning, bruised and battered. "You look awful," she teased lightly. Kenzo groaned in frustration. "These ants are irritatingly strategic. I've killed around 30, but they injured my shoulder and hip." Offering to heal him, Ari mischievously added, "But this time, my price isn't money." Before Kenzo could reply, his senses flared in alarm, spotting more soldiers approaching. Turning back to Ari, he froze. She was gone. His blood ran cold as he shouted desperately to Tatsumi, "Stay alert. Something dangerous is here." Before he could even finish his warning, a shadowy figure blurred towards him, erasing his presence in an instant. Tatsumi, driven mad with fury, charged blindly. But even his rage couldn't compensate for the impossible speed of his enemy. In moments, Team C had vanished. Unaware of this disaster, the Korean team continued forward, clashing with increasingly powerful royal guards. Ma Dongwook thought bitterly. These guards are formidable enough to challenge S ranks, but they're too simple-minded against coordinated hunters. Blocking attacks with his massive shield, he signaled Cha Haein, who quickly dashed forward, cutting through the ants with lethal elegance. Dongwook, struggling slightly, felt relief knowing there weren't more of these monsters. Noticing Dongwook sweating, Min reassured him lightly, "Don't worry, I have your back." Beck smiled approvingly, teasing Min, "Looks like you're no wimp after all." Min shot back, "Speak for yourself, you're making rookie mistakes," before smashing another ant down, calmly instructing, "Destroying the head isn't enough, crush the limbs too." Beck glanced around cautiously, noting, "We've barely reached the queen's chamber, and we're already dealing with such fierce guards. These are just the discarded first-generation guards. Those closer to the queen will be second-generation or stronger." Realizing the intensity of the upcoming battle, Min quickly cast powerful buffs, enhancing the hunter's strength dramatically. He announced confidently, "These buffs aren't just for morale, they'll let you comfortably fight multiple enemies." Suddenly, countless sinister eyes flickered open from the darkness ahead. Beck smiled dangerously. 10 ants each, let's handle this quickly." Min began, "My combat power's around an A rank, so..." Beck interrupted firmly, "You're our healer. Stay back and let us handle this." Meanwhile, Yeppy and Kay hurried anxiously towards Team C's location, growing increasingly concerned by their silence. Upon arrival, they found only scattered ant corpses and shattered equipment, no sign of their allies. Yeppy panicked, stumbling across broken glasses drenched in blood. Turning to Kay, he noticed him falling to his knees, violently retching. "What's wrong?" Yeppy demanded urgently. "I've never smelled something so vile before," Kay whispered, eyes wide with terror. Raising his head, he spotted a monstrous aura pulsing malevolently. Instinctively, he hurled a massive shard of ice toward it, but in a flash, the ice shattered effortlessly. Before Kay could process the impossibility of what he saw, the darkness claimed him as well. Deep within the tunnels, the Korean hunters finally reached the entrance to the Queen's chamber after defeating countless guards. Beck exhaled deeply. "That took longer than expected." Choi replied calmly, "Less than 5 minutes against this many is impressive." Beck glanced towards Cha, slightly awed. She'd massacred nearly twice as many ants as he had. Ma Dongwook quickly summarized, "We spent 15 minutes getting here. It'll probably take another 15 to reach the queen herself. We need a plan for finishing her off fast." Suddenly, Cha paused, sensing something. She whispered tensely, "I smell her," alongside powerful guards. Beck nodded decisively. "I'll scout ahead first." Moving cautiously forward, they heard a deafening roar. Entering the chamber, they finally glimpsed the queen, massive and ominous, surrounded by 8 exceptionally powerful guards. Beck announced grimly, "She's in the back, heavily guarded." Ma Dongwook swiftly strategized, voice steady despite the rising tension. "These guards are strong enough to threaten even S ranks, but nothing we can't handle. Cha, eliminate the guards. I'll handle the queen." With no turning back now, the hunters charged, resolute and fierce, into the decisive battle against the monstrous queen and her elite protectors. Choi stepped forward confidently, flames crackling from his fingertips, eyes narrowing at the swarm of royal guards approaching. "Usually, I hold back to save mana, but today it would be a waste not to go all out." With that declaration, flames erupted around him, incinerating the charging insects with terrifying ease. Yet in his intensity, Choi failed to notice an ant creeping silently behind him, poised to strike. Just as the creature lunged forward, several arrows pierced its skull, dropping it lifelessly to the ground. Choi turned startled, to see Lim calmly lowering his bow, nodding reassuringly, "I'll cover the rear." Witnessing his teammates unleashing their true potential, Beck grinned fiercely. Deciding there was no longer a reason to suppress his power, he let his form shift violently into a monstrous beast, muscles swelling, claws emerging from his fingertips. With grim determination, Beck growled, "I might look hideous, but this isn't a beauty contest. It's time to exterminate these pests." Charging forward, he effortlessly crushed 2 royal guards' skulls with a single blow. Cha, astonished by Beck's terrifying strength, felt a surge of motivation. She activated her provoking quake ability, drawing the attention of the remaining guards away from their queen. Meanwhile, Ma Dongwu quickly took advantage of the chaos, rushing the queen herself. His massive shield slammed down, halting her advance and buying crucial time for his comrades. The cameraman, watching in awe, felt his pulse quicken as a voice crackled through his earpiece, informing him that viewership had spiked dramatically. "Get closer. We need a better shot," the voice urged him. But just as he moved forward, a strong hand grabbed his shoulder and pulled him back firmly. It was Min Byung-yu, his normally gentle eyes now sharp with warning. "Stay behind us," Min cautioned calmly, sensing the intense magic swirling around. "An S-rank monster is ahead. Your safety can't be guaranteed." The cameraman felt an unexpected shiver run down his spine. He'd always assumed healers were weak, yet this man's aura suggested he was stronger than most A-ranks he'd met. Back in Korea, people crowded anxiously around screens, watching the broadcast with bated breath. Having already faced defeat 3 times before, many whispered desperate prayers, knowing another failure could doom the entire nation to Jeju Island's fate. Meanwhile, inside the cave, the Korean hunters finally dispatched the last of the royal guards, turning their full attention to the queen. Madongwook and Beck unleashed a relentless assault, driving the monstrous insect back as it roared in agony. Without her guards, the queen is just an oversized husk. Beck shouted triumphantly. But suddenly, the queen spewed a foul, viscous liquid over Beck and Madongwook, momentarily paralyzing them. Min quickly responded from behind, channeling his healing energy, instantly negating the debilitating effects. He taunted sharply, "If you wanted to defeat us, you should have targeted me first." The queen turned furiously, charging toward Min, but Madongwook intercepted her instantly. "I won't let you touch our healer," he shouted defiantly. Spotting a clear opening, Choi called out, "Everyone get back." Unleashing an overwhelming inferno, he enveloped the queen in blazing flames. For a moment, victory seemed certain, until an ear-piercing screech shook the cavern, forcing everyone to shield their ears. Realization hit Beck like a thunderclap. She's summoning the soldiers back. Outside, Ray urgently relayed the grim news to Goto. Watching helplessly as thousands of ants surged toward the cave, the noise-jamming devices useless. Before anyone could react, Cha, sensing the urgency, launched herself forward and sliced through the queen's torso, finally silencing her. Landing softly, she breathed out, "It's done." Lim, relieved, began to ask, "Did we just become one of the few countries to clear an S-rank gate?" But Beck cut him off, unease filling his voice. "Something doesn't feel right." Suddenly, Madongwook's communicator crackled frantically, warning of incoming ants. The flame barrier at the cave entrance shattered ominously, and a powerful, overwhelming presence descended upon them. Emerging slowly from the shadows was a single ant unlike any they'd encountered, radiating dark, terrifying energy. Cha's blood ran cold. Each slow, deliberate footstep resonated like a heartbeat of dread. "This thing is no ordinary beast," she whispered, her voice trembling. Lim, frozen in fear, managed to choke out, "We have to kill it now." Effortlessly bypassing Madongwook, the ant approached the queen's corpse. The hunters watched, terror gripping them, as it screeched furiously, mourning its queen. Its eyes blazed with vengeance, turning back to the team with deadly intent. Before Cha could even react, it appeared behind her, shattering her bones with a brutal strike that hurled her against the wall. Blood spilled from her mouth as Madongwook, stunned, barely raised his shield before the monster broke both shield and arm with a single devastating blow. Desperately countering, Madongwook swung, but the monster caught his arms, mercilessly ripping them away in mere moments, The beast continued its ruthless onslaught, slashing Beck with unseeable speed, leaving him bleeding on the cavern floor. Choi raised his flames to defend himself, but it easily pierced his defense, rendering him unconscious. Lim, desperately aiming an arrow at close range, could only watch in horror as the creature caught and shattered his projectile before knocking him aside effortlessly. Believing its enemies vanquished, the ant stood proudly, until Madongwook, fueled by desperation, delivered a powerful blow from behind. "As long as our healer lives, I can keep fighting," Madongwook roared defiantly. Hidden nearby, Min Byung-yu stayed perfectly still, confident in his camouflage ability. "As long as I stay hidden," he thought, "we still have a chance." But the creature's terrifying eyes turned slowly toward Min, pinpointing his exact location despite the spell. Beck's scream of horror came too late. Min looked down, stunned, as a monstrous hand pierced through his chest. With his last breath, Min weakly pleaded, "Please run." Then, with horrific finality, the monster bit down, devouring Min's head. All courage shattered among the survivors as they witnessed their comrade's brutal demise. Beck, driven mad by grief, lunged furiously at the ant, but it caught him effortlessly midair, holding him helplessly. Just as Beck braced for his end, the ant's mouth moved, echoing Min's last words mockingly. "Please run." Beck's heart froze. He realized the horrifying truth. The monster, by consuming Min, had absorbed his memories and abilities. Struggling to form words, the ant spoke again, voice uneven yet unmistakably Min's. "Weak. You are weak." It tilted its head, confused, angered, demanding an explanation. "The queen attacked here? Even without guards. Doesn't make sense." Its chilling eyes locked onto Beck's, a dark curiosity filling its voice. "Tell me, who is your king?" Beck stared at the monstrous ant in confusion, unable to understand its strange question about a king. He looked around helplessly, seeing the severely injured forms of his comrades. A heavy dread gripped him as he realized they might all soon share Hunter Min's fate. But before the beast could finish its attack, it suddenly paused, sensing something outside. Its head turned sharply toward the exit, murmuring, "Outside," before swiftly vanishing into the darkness. Beck collapsed to his knees, desperately gasping for air. A grim thought crossed his mind. Did that thing go after Goto Ruji? Fighting exhaustion, he gathered the last of his strength and urged, "We've got to escape this place before it returns." But as he glanced toward the exit, a swarm of ants poured into the cave, blocking any chance of retreat. Meanwhile, Goto and the surviving Japanese hunters hurried to reunite with their scattered teams. Mari anxiously reported, "Neither of the other teams are responding to transmissions." Goto, maintaining composure, calmly responded, "It's likely interference from the ants jamming signals. Try contacting Team Bravo again." Mari shook her head nervously. "Only Team Alpha is responding clearly." "Then order them to finish quickly and retreat to the extraction point," Goto instructed, his tone firm. As they arrived at the rendezvous location, a horrifying sight awaited. The mutilated, partially devoured bodies of their comrades scattered grotesquely across the ground. A transmission crackled to life. The cold voice of the Japanese Hunter Association chairman demanded, "Goto, status report. What happened there?" Goto answered without hesitation, "We have fatalities." The chairman clicked his tongue irritably. "What needless losses. Our strategy was intended to avoid this." "They were weak," Goto replied coldly. "Their deaths won't impact our goal." The chairman agreed dismissively. "Yes. As long as you're alive, their sacrifice is trivial. More importantly, what is your assessment of the Korean team?" Goto answered bluntly. "Based on their performance and current circumstances, their chance of survival is 0%. A chilling smile resonated in the chairman's voice. "Perfect. Our true goal, the total annihilation of Korea's strongest hunters, is complete. We'll retreat immediately under the guise of regret. Your national-level challenge tragically fails. Perfect media coverage." "Understood," Goto nodded, turning to instruct his remaining team. "Withdraw immediately. We'll retrieve our dead later." But Goto suddenly sensed imminent danger and spun around, blocking a vicious attack just in time. Mari wasn't as lucky, killed instantly before she could react. Goto narrowed his eyes, sensing immense power from the attacker. He commanded Minoru urgently, "Fall back immediately and join Team Bravo." "But," Minoru protested, "you'll only hinder me here." Goto snapped harshly. Minoru hesitated briefly before retreating hastily. Alone, Goto faced the towering ant that spoke eerily. Are you the king? Goto smirked arrogantly, excited by the challenge. Drawing his blade, he boldly declared, "Yes, I am the king." But as those words left his mouth, the ant released its immense, terrifying aura. Goto's confidence shattered instantly, his mind flashing back to his duel with Jinwoo. This feeling, it's just like him. A moment later, the monster lunged forward, ending the battle decisively. Back in the cave, desperation gripped the Korean hunters as they fought hopelessly against the oncoming swarm of soldier ants. Beck, hidden behind Choi's fiery barrier, shouted desperately, "Choi, increase your flames. We need more time." Choi, strained and exhausted, shook his head bitterly. "If I do that, we'll suffocate from lack of oxygen." Accepting their grim fate, Beck whispered helplessly, "We've reached our limit." But suddenly, black smoke erupted from Beck's shadow, forming a powerful shadow soldier who immediately held back the ants. Stunned, Beck muttered, "This black warrior. Where did it come from?" Far away in Korea, Jinwoo observed the unfolding chaos calmly. Elsewhere on Jeju Island, the cameraman cowered as an ant lunged toward him, accepting death with bitter regret. "Dad, I wish we'd talked about more than just have you eaten?" Suddenly, the ant was impaled by a shadowy sword. The cameraman opened his eyes to find himself alive, saved by another shadow soldier. At the broadcasting station, panic overwhelmed the director, who stared anxiously at screens showing their hunters slaughtered mercilessly. "How can we broadcast this horror live?" he shouted in frustration. "Sir, viewers are calling non-stop," cried an assistant. But before the director could answer, another crew member announced excitedly, "Something new is happening." All eyes shifted to the monitors, where Jinwoo stood resolutely amidst a legion of shadow soldiers. The director, realizing this was their last hope, commanded decisively, "Restart the broadcast live, immediately." "But sir, live means no editing." "We've already stopped once," the director shouted. "There's no turning back. Our fate now rests entirely on that hunter." On the battlefield, Jinwoo signaled Iron, who unleashed his powerful taunting roar, drawing every ant's attention. With calm precision, Jinwoo unsheathed his demon monarch's daggers and cut through countless ants effortlessly. His shadow army overwhelmed the enemy, completely turning the tide. Behind Tusk's protective barrier, the battered Korean hunters watched with awe. Maedong-wook, bewildered, whispered to Beck, "Is this really happening?" Beck's voice trembled with cautious hope. "We might actually survive." After eliminating numerous ants, Jinwoo raised his hand, shadows erupting from fallen monsters as he commanded softly, "Arise." The confused reporter hastily reported to viewers, "The ants, they seem to be fighting each other." Jinwoo approached the injured hunters swiftly, distributing healing potions. "Drink these now. I'll explain later," he instructed firmly. Everyone recovered miraculously, except Chaen, whose wounds refused to heal. Maedong-wook asked urgently, "Why isn't Hunter Cha recovering?" Jinwoo's expression darkened gravely. "Her injuries exceed what the potion can handle. She must evacuate immediately. Her life is fading." But before evacuation could begin, a terrifying presence approached. The monstrous ant, freshly returned, declared angrily, "Outside there was no king. The one I found was a fake. Where is your true king?" Beck paled in horror, realization sinking in painfully. "If it's returned here, then Goto Ruji must be dead." Jinwoo stepped forward calmly, thinking clearly, so that's why Goto's signal vanished. The monstrous ant faced Jinwoo directly, recalling Goto's memories. Sensing Jinwoo's power, it warned ominously, "You possess a dangerous aura," and flapped its wings aggressively, trying to intimidate him. Jinwoo, utterly unfazed, met the creature's gaze coldly, delivering a chilling punchline with sharp clarity. "Now you seem more like a bug." Meanwhile, viewers at home anxiously watched as the broadcast resumed. The anchor announced grimly, "Hunter Min is confirmed dead. The fate of remaining hunters is unknown. However, a mysterious hunter has appeared, and the broadcast now continues live." As the broadcast resumed, Park, Higong, and Uni stared in disbelief at the screen. Jinwoo stood amidst the injured hunters on Jeju Island, a sight none of them expected. Even Jaina, watching anxiously from home, gasped softly, murmuring, "Appa." Far away in Japan, tension filled the Japanese Hunter Association's headquarters as their chairman listened intently to the final recording between Goto and the monstrous ant. The moment Goto's voice vanished, replaced by chilling silence, the chairman's anger flared violently. Turning sharply to Ray, he demanded, Where is that monster now? Back inside the Queen's lair, Ray reported solemnly. The Korean team appears to have survived so far, and an unknown entity of enormous magic power has just emerged. The chairman stiffened, snapping orders immediately. Bring up Korea's live broadcast now. Back in Korea, Chairman Go Gun-hee, hospitalized but alert, felt a surge of relief at Jinwoo's arrival, his clenched fists easing slightly despite his doctor's warnings. You've finally shown yourself, Jinwoo. Inside the lair, the monstrous ant lunged violently, claws slicing through the air. Instead of dodging, Jinwoo stood perfectly still, taking the full force directly to his face. A deafening crash shook the cavern, blasting rock and debris everywhere. Beck and Choi shielded themselves, eyes wide in astonishment. Such monstrous strength, Beck muttered, shocked. As the dust settled, the ant proclaimed arrogantly, "You are not the king either." But the creature's confidence instantly faded. Jinwoo was still standing, unharmed and unfazed, his gaze icy. Without a word, Jinwoo channeled mana into his fist, striking the monster squarely. The force blasted the ant into the cave wall with a thunderous explosion, shaking the entire cavern. Madongwook, staring in disbelief, asked weakly, "Is he really a mage-type hunter?" Beck responded, eyes locked on Jinwoo. "At this point, I'm starting to doubt everything I know." As the ant emerged from the rubble, barely scratched, Jinwoo considered its sturdy exoskeleton. No wonder even Goto failed. Before he could finish his thought, the monster launched itself at him, colliding with devastating force. Though Jinwoo blocked easily, the sheer impact sent shockwaves rippling through the cave, cracking the ground beneath their feet. Both fighters exchanged powerful blows at blinding speeds, seemingly matched in every way. Yet slowly, panic crept into the creature's thoughts as it noticed cracks spreading across its exoskeleton. "I'm losing in raw power?" it thought incredulously. "What is this human?" Suddenly, Jinwoo struck the monster's cracked torso again. But in a desperate move, the creature's poisonous tongue lashed out, slicing Jinwoo's face. He staggered back, the poison searing through his veins. "It's the deadliest venom," the monster sneered confidently, approaching for the killing blow. "Magic and poison combined, there's no chance you'll survive." Meanwhile, near the extraction point, Minoru was trembling, describing the horrific fate of Goto and the Japanese team. Ken angrily grabbed him, unable to believe his words, when suddenly the roar of an approaching helicopter filled the air, momentarily breaking their argument. Inside the cave, the ant moved confidently to finish off Jinwoo, but at the very last second, Jinwoo's hand snapped out, grabbing its claw tightly. The monster's eyes widened in shock. "Impossible. You shouldn't be able to move." Jinwoo replied with a cold, sharp punch, hurling the ant violently into another cavern wall. As it struggled up from the rubble, Jinwoo sensed its growing anxiety. "You look nervous," he remarked quietly, eyes gleaming dangerously. "I suppose that makes two of us." Suddenly, Jinwoo propelled himself forward, landing a powerful kick on the monster's head. The cavern shook, a storm of debris blocking everyone's view. As the dust settled, the creature had vanished. "Where did it go?" Choi whispered tensely. Jinwoo's gaze shifted upwards. The ant now hovered above, body shrinking rapidly as it poured energy into agility. "Strength won't decide this fight," the creature hissed, "speed will." In an instant, the ant charged Jinwoo, a blur of speed, but Jinwoo effortlessly sidestepped, appearing instantly behind it. The ant barely managed to block Jinwoo's blades, its broken claws shattering further under the strain. As the fight raged on, the ant realized desperately, "He's getting faster. How is that possible?" Jinwoo observed carefully, thinking calmly, "He's stronger than the demon Monarch, but I've grown even more." Seizing his moment, Jinwoo unleashed a devastating combo, using his newly evolved skill, critical chaen. Blow after blow shattered the creature's defenses completely. Sensing defeat, the ant frantically attempted to flee, but Jinwoo appeared instantly before it, voice icy and unrelenting. "Where do you think you're going?" One precise strike later, the ant howled in agony as Jinwoo severed its arm. Cornered and desperate, it let out an ear-piercing shriek, calling every ant nearby into the cavern. "Finish these humans," it ordered desperately. But instead of fear, Jinwoo smiled faintly, black smoke erupting from him. A vast army of shadow soldiers emerged, standing protectively between the injured hunters and the incoming swarm. Without hesitation, both armies charged fiercely, filling the cavern with chaos. Despite their superior skills, the shadow soldiers faced overwhelming numbers. Seeing this, Jinwoo summoned Tusk, pausing briefly to warn him sternly. Only target the ants. If you harm even one human, you'll never be summoned again. Tusk nodded gravely, preparing to unleash his devastating magic, as Jinwoo stood ready, determined to end this desperate battle once and for all. In a stunning moment of power, Tusk channeled his magic, growing rapidly into a towering giant whose shadow blanketed the cavern. Every hunter, even the battered Beck and weary Madong Wook, stood frozen, eyes wide, their hearts skipping beats at the impossible spectacle unfolding before them. Without hesitation, Tusk unleashed his ultimate skill, Hymn of the Fire Dragon. Flames erupted violently, obliterating countless ants instantly, leaving nothing but scorched earth in their wake. Lim staggered back, eyes locked on Tusk, breathless as he whispered, "Is that really just a summoned creature?" "No," Madong Wook answered grimly, visibly shaken by the devastating display of power. "That's no mere summon. It's as if the Demon King himself descended into the human world." Across from them, the monstrous ant stood petrified, a dark realization creeping into its mind. Born to conquer, it had devoured everything in its path, growing endlessly, certain of becoming a monarch. But now, staring into Jinwoo's cold, unyielding eyes, the creature felt something it had never known, true fear. Desperation consumed it, and it immediately used Min's stolen healing ability, regenerating its wings. Jinwoo, recognizing the power instantly, narrowed his gaze. "So you took Hunter Min's ability as well?" The ant bolted skyward, panic fueling its escape. Its massive hand slammed down mercilessly, crushing it back to earth with devastating force. The creature writhed beneath the mighty grip, desperate yet helpless. Jinwoo approached slowly, voice chillingly calm. "You won't escape from here." With surgical precision, Jinwoo struck, his new skill, mutilation, carving through the insect, finally bringing an end to its nightmare reign. As silence settled, he received the familiar notification confirming the kill and his subsequent level increase. Just as relief started to take hold, Beck's anguished voice shattered it. "Jinwoo, Hunter Cha isn't going to last much longer." Alarmed, Jinwoo knelt beside Cha. He cursed himself quietly. "I wasted too much time." He frantically assessed options, each one impossible. His teleportation was still cooling down, and no nearby healer could save her in time. Then suddenly, inspiration struck, grim but necessary. Turning urgently to the cameraman, Jinwoo commanded firmly, "Turn the camera off immediately." He summoned his shadow soldiers, who returned swiftly with Hunter Min's body. Beck froze, his eyes filling with disbelief. "Jinwoo, what are you planning to do?" Jinwoo didn't answer, focusing instead on extracting Min's shadow. But each attempt failed. Min's powerful while resisting fiercely even in death. Time was slipping through Jinwoo's fingers. Hunter Cha's breaths grew weaker. He concentrated deeply, and on the third attempt, a shadow rose gently from Min's body, quietly approaching Hunter Cha to begin healing. Even in death, Min remained the gentle healer he had always been. Beck watched the scene unfold, overcome with sorrow and conflict. He reached out, gripping Jinwoo's shoulder earnestly. "Please, don't do this." Min hated violence with all his heart. "Don't force him into battle, even now." Jinwoo paused, feeling Beck's deep sincerity. He gently removed Beck's hand, thinking solemnly, "Twice you've gripped my shoulder, but this time, it isn't an order. It's a plea from your heart." He nodded, moved by Beck's genuine request, and softly dismissed Min's shadow, letting it fade peacefully. Beck and Jinwoo exchanged a quiet look, both understanding the heavy weight of that farewell. Outside the cavern, the extraction helicopter's rotors churned the air loudly, a beacon of hope signaling an end to this hellish ordeal. One by one, hunters boarded, but Jinwoo lingered behind, his gaze set upon the island's countless remaining monsters. Beck approached him knowingly, his voice heavy. "Still something left for you here?" "Yeah," Jinwoo nodded, eyes filled with unwavering resolve. "I need to clear a safe path for you all to escape." Mounting Kaisel swiftly, he soared off, leaving Beck to watch in silent awe as an endless rain of dead ants soon fell from above, confirming the unstoppable might Jinwoo wielded. Meanwhile, at the Japanese extraction point, a traumatized Minoru was being interrogated about what happened on the island. It was a monster, no, worse than a monster. You can't comprehend its strength. Goto stood no chance. "We're all doomed." Yet Ray cut him off sharply, announcing calmly, "The Jeju Island raid is already over. The monster you're speaking of is dead." Minoru froze, stunned disbelief etched across his face, his thoughts swirling chaotically. Japan had underestimated Korea, had dismissed Jinwoo as inferior to Goto. How wrong they'd been. While Japan lost many of their strongest, Korea had just become the 7th nation ever to clear an S-rank gate. As Minoru grappled with that harsh truth, Ray warned urgently. But this isn't finished, the remaining ants are swarming. Prepare the fleet for battle. Back on Jeju, Jinwoo's shadow army swept mercilessly through the remaining monsters, shadow mages carefully destroying every last unhatched egg, and experience points piled rapidly. Suddenly remembering an overlooked item, Jinwoo pulled out an unfamiliar weapon from his inventory. Curious, he swung it experimentally, unleashing a wave of devastating electricity that obliterated entire clusters of eggs instantly. He smiled slightly, impressed and amused, thinking, I almost wasted such a powerful tool by forgetting about it. Across the globe, inside a dimly lit room in the United States, 2 men watched a recording of Jinwoo's astonishing fight against the Ant King. Michael Connor, breaking the tense silence, spoke quietly. Well, Director Brennan, your thoughts? David Brennan, director of the Hunter Management Bureau, sighed deeply, exhaustion evident. You didn't come here for my thoughts, Michael. Not at 4 in the morning. You already know what I think. Michael offered a slight smile, his voice calm yet filled with intrigue. A hunter capable of commanding hundreds of summoned soldiers. That's far too valuable to remain confined in a small country like Korea. Both men turned their attention back to the screen, staring intently at Jinwoo's determined figure as he annihilated his foes with unmatched power. David nodded thoughtfully, processing Michael's words before asking, Do we have any further intel on this hunter? Michael handed him a thick file labeled Sung Jin-Woo. His voice measured yet curious as he explained the contents. There's been a recent incident involving 2 S-rank hunters, causing significant collateral damage. One hunter who fought against Hwang Dong-soo and escaped was identified as Sung Il-hwan. We captured him in an A-rank gate that emerged in the eastern U.S. Initially, we couldn't determine if he was even human, but throughout his interrogation, he insisted he was a hunter from Korea. Interestingly enough, Michael leaned forward, his tone growing serious. It turns out Sung Il-hwan is Sung Jin-Woo's father. David flipped through the documents, absorbing the startling revelation. Fascinating, he murmured. Considering no other country has realized the full significance of Sung Jin-Woo yet, not even his name, this represents a remarkable opportunity for us. He paused, a frown forming on his brow. However, this is different from our earlier recruitment of Hwang Dong-soo. Korea is an ally we've carefully maintained. Poaching another S-rank hunter could severely strain diplomatic ties. Michael met his gaze, unflinching. Isn't Sung Jin-Woo worth the risk? After a brief silence, David sighed, knowing Michael was right. Then tell me honestly, do you think he'll accept an invitation to come to the United States? Michael smiled faintly. We won't know unless we try. Back on Jeju Island, Jinwoo had finished eradicating every remaining trace of the insect army, leveling up to 100 in the process. As he approached the lifeless body of the Ant King, a sinister aura still lingered. Without hesitation, Jinwoo activated shadow extraction, and suddenly, darkness enveloped him entirely. For a moment, silence pressed against him like a tangible force, robbing him of sensation. Doubt briefly flickered through his mind. Had the extraction failed? Just as swiftly as it had appeared, the darkness receded, snapping him back to reality. Before him, kneeling obediently, the shadow of the Ant King emerged, its overwhelming presence radiating power beyond any warrior he'd summoned before. This class, Jinwoo whispered, captivated. It's beyond Elite Knight. Is this a new class entirely? He felt an electric thrill run through him as he realized just how formidable his new shadow soldier truly was. As Jinwoo prepared to extract the Queen's shadow, a deep, commanding voice suddenly called out behind him. My king. He turned, surprised, seeing his newly raised shadow, one capable of speech. Curious, Jinwoo asked, Why are you able to speak when my other shadows cannot? The shadow creature bowed deeply, his voice resonating with reverence. I have been reborn through your power. My will is entirely yours to command, eternally loyal. I humbly ask you to bestow upon me a name. Jinwoo considered it briefly before answering decisively. Your name is Beru. The shadow warrior acknowledged proudly, his form radiating renewed strength. Turning back to the queen, Jinwoo extracted her shadow as well. But as soon as she emerged, a a strange shift occurred. He felt his control slipping from the other insect soldiers. Beru quickly explained, "The Queen's unique magic allows her absolute control over the swarm to propagate our species. As long as she exists, her presence supersedes yours among the insects." Hearing that, Jinwoo immediately dispersed the Queen's shadow, declaring calmly, "There's no room for two leaders among my ranks." With nothing else to claim here, Jinwoo ordered his shadows to halt the collection of magic stones. "Leave them," he commanded, generosity clear in his voice. "The Korean Hunter Association can use these resources to rebuild Jeju Island." He then wondered aloud about the remaining ants on the island. Beru confidently assured him, "Without leadership, the remaining ants have dispersed. They pose no unified threat." "How many remain?" Jinwoo inquired calmly. "Approximately 4,000. Beru responded without hesitation. Jinwoo smiled faintly, glancing back at his powerful new soldier. "Think you can handle them yourself?" Beru's eyes glowed fiercely. "Your order is all I require." Meanwhile, panic had gripped hunters fighting desperately along the coastline. Their efforts seemed futile against the relentless swarms of escaping ants. Fear filled their hearts as the creatures closed in unstoppable. Just when hope seemed lost, a blur of dark energy raced past, shredding the insects instantly. Bewildered hunters watched as Beru systematically annihilated the ants with ruthless precision, saving their lives without breaking stride. At the same moment, far across the sea, China's navy prepared nervously as stray ants approached their shores. The captain watched calmly, halting his crew from firing. "Wait," he instructed with a knowing smile. "He wishes to handle this personally." On the deck stood Lu Jigang, China's strongest hunter, his swords drawn with a lazy confidence. As he casually swung his blades, a powerful flash lit the sky, tearing through the approaching monsters, reducing them to harmless debris raining into the sea. Disappointed, Lu sighed. "If only the ant that fought Sung Jin-Woo had come. That might have entertained me for a while longer." Elsewhere, Thomas Andre, the infamous guild master of America's Scavenger Guild, carefully studied footage of Jin-Woo's epic battle against the Ant King. He sighed deeply, eyes glinting with intrigue and frustration. "It's a shame," Thomas muttered. Huang Dongsu's fixation on Sung Jin-Woo makes approaching him much more complicated now. His assistant asked quietly, "What will you do if Jin-Woo clashes directly with Huang Dongsu?" Thomas turned sharply toward her, eyes burning with ruthless intent. "Huang Dongsu is an asset to my guild, and my guild is my own. I have no mercy for anyone who touches what's mine, not even the United States government." 3 days later, as the Knights Guild landed on Jeju Island to secure and recover magic stones, Park Jong-soo casually began recounting an oddly personal story to Yoon Jae-hoon. "You know, there was once a young athlete who dreamed only of winning Olympic gold. He sacrificed everything, endured every pain. Yet on the eve of the event, he failed, disqualified when magic was detected in him." Yoon Jae-hoon paused, realization dawning as he raised an eyebrow. "That story, it's about you, isn't it?" Ignoring him, Park Jong-soo knelt down, grasping a magic crystal gleaming at his feet. A sly grin stretched across his face. "These crystals, they're top-tier magic stones. Gather them all quickly, and soon, our guild will become the most powerful in Korea." His voice carried with it the fierce determination of a man who had once lost everything. Park Jang-soo's confident grin faded into confusion as a young girl behind them sharply scolded, "Hey, that's stealing." Ignoring her, Young Yun remarked casually, "Hunter Jinwoo cleaned up those monsters thoroughly. There's no trace of magical energy left in these insects, so we can safely gather these magic stones without worry." Just as he spoke, a stray monster suddenly lunged out from a shadowed corner. Without missing a beat, Park Jang-soo swiftly drew his blade and effortlessly sliced the creature's head clean off. Turning calmly to his startled soldiers, he reassured them, "No need for panic. Even if a few stray ants linger around, that's exactly why we're here." Yet as his confidence returned, Young Yun's voice tightened anxiously. "Guildmaster Park, look, there's someone else over there." Turning swiftly, Park Jang-soo noticed a mysterious figure slowly approaching through the haze. His hand instinctively went to his weapon. "Stop right there. Identify yourself. Only the military and approved guild members are authorized to be here." Yet despite his friendly gesture, his next words sent chills down Park's spine. Strange and guttural, a language clearly not human but monstrous. Before they could react further, a gentle but sinister snap echoed across the area. Instantly, Park Jang-soo and his team collapsed to the ground unconscious. Confused, the strange man turned toward the source of the snap, a towering blue-skinned creature that calmly approached him. The man asked sharply, "Why did you do that?" With an indifferent shrug, the creature replied, "We don't need a disturbance. I merely put them to sleep." Looking skeptically at the unconscious hunters, the blue-skinned figure muttered thoughtfully, "Strange, isn't it? To think someone like him would help humans." The man gazed over the field of lifeless ants and replied softly, almost philosophical, "Who can truly understand his heart?" "Curious," the creature retorted. "Why not go ask him directly if you're so interested?" Ignoring the jab, the man grimaced at the foul smell surrounding them and murmured with nostalgia, "If that woman had been here, she'd be utterly horrified by this overwhelming stench." Impatient, the creature declared firmly, "The hunt proceeds exactly as expected." A dark, swirling portal opened silently behind it. Hesitating briefly, the man suggested, "Since we're already here, shouldn't we take care of the one who's currently in Korea?" Without looking back, the creature responded dismissively, "Leave that task in his hands," stepping through the portal without another word. Smirking at the creature's retreating form, the man taunted, "Afraid of getting involved, are you?" But there was no reply. The blue figure vanished silently into the portal's depths. With a small sigh, the man opened his own shimmering portal and stepped through, leaving the silent battlefield behind. Far away from Jeju, Jinwoo quietly attended a solemn funeral held in honor of the fallen hunters from the raid. Approaching the altar respectfully, he reflected upon the aftermath of the battle. Despite being hailed as a hero by many, he'd also become the target of criticism. Some believed fewer lives would have been lost if he'd joined the raid sooner. Turning to leave, Jinwoo caught sight of Hunter Beck, standing among the mourners. Their eyes met briefly, and a quiet exchange of respectful nods passed between them. Just as Jinwoo was about to step away, Beck gently called out, "Hunter Sung Jin-Woo, thank you for everything you did on Jeju." Nearby, Hunter Cha Haein stood watching silently, her face unexpectedly flushing bright red upon seeing Jinwoo. Noticing her embarrassment, Jinwoo couldn't help but feel slightly puzzled, quietly wondering why she was reacting that way. Later that day, Jinwoo found himself seated opposite Chairman Go Gun-hee, sharing his intention to finally establish his guild. The chairman smiled warmly, reassuring him, "An S-rank hunter like yourself doesn't require a formal guild master's license. Simply call the association when you're ready, and we'll handle the paperwork." After a short pause, the chairman's expression turned serious. "By the way, Jinwoo, did you by any chance set up some kind of barrier or magical ward on Jeju Island?" Jinwoo raised an eyebrow, genuinely surprised by the unexpected question. The chairman quickly explained, "A recovery team sent to clean up the remaining ants and gather magic stones mysteriously lost consciousness. And these weren't weak hunters either. The group consisted of A ranks, B ranks, and even a member of the Knights Guild. Initially, I thought perhaps you'd established some kind of barrier and forgotten about it." Thoughtful for a moment, Jinwoo shook his head slowly. "No, I did no such thing." "Did the team remember anything unusual before fainting?" Chairman Go shook his head grimly. "That's just it. They have no recollection at all. We still can't pinpoint if this was caused by magic or some other unknown factor." Jinwoo silently considered if the remaining ants could have possibly set a trap. Just then, an aide approached the chairman, whispering urgently. Rising from his seat, the chairman apologized. "It seems my next appointment arrived earlier than expected. Thank you for making time to speak with me, Jinwoo." Jinwoo stood as well, shaking his hand briefly. Moments later, as he headed toward the parking lot, Jinwoo was approached by a stranger in a neat suit. "Hunter Sung Jin-Woo, I presume? My name is Adam White. I'm an agent from the Hunter Management Bureau of the United States." Adam handed him a formal envelope, adding with a smile, "You weren't easy to find. I even visited your office earlier." Jinwoo immediately connected the dots, realizing this was likely the foreigner Jinho had mentioned. Narrowing his eyes slightly, Jinwoo questioned, "What exactly do you need from me?" Adam answered plainly, "There's information I'd like to share with you. Information no other country or organization has access to except ours." Suspicious, Jinwoo inquired, "And why exactly would you share something so valuable with me?" "Originally," Adam began smoothly, "I planned to approach you alone, but after your remarkable performance on Jeju, our deputy director insisted on meeting you in person. He's waiting nearby. Would you be willing to meet with him?" After a short moment of contemplation, Jinwoo turned away, replying neutrally, "I'm not entirely sure I trust this information yet. Let me think about it." Just as Jinwoo began to walk away, Adam quickly added, "When negotiating, it's best not to hide your trump card. We possess an awakened capable of upgrading other awakened." Interest flickering in his eyes, Jinwoo eventually found himself entering a large building accompanied by Adam. Inside, he met Deputy Director Michael Connor, a composed figure who wasted no time. "Let's cut to the chase, Hunter Sung," Michael said, sliding an immigration document across the table. "Normally this process takes years, but say one word, and you'll become a U.S. citizen instantly." Ignoring the tempting offer, Jinwoo leaned forward intently. "From what Adam told me, I was here only for information. Is it true? Can you truly upgrade another hunter's abilities?" Michael smiled knowingly. "Absolutely. In fact, the person capable of that is here now." Moments later, Mrs. Selner stepped gracefully into the room. Jinwoo immediately sensed the powerful aura surrounding her. "Allow me to introduce Mrs. Selner," Michael said, gesturing politely. She met Jinwoo's eyes confidently, explaining, "You must find my ability difficult to believe. However, once you experience it, you'll find it irresistible." She continued smoothly, "Every hunter has an unbreakable limit unless they reawaken. My power forcibly surpasses that limit, like inducing a second awakening. Unfortunately," she added gently, "the process is so taxing that I can only help 3 or 4 hunters each year." Jinwoo quietly considered her words, his mind racing at the potential implications of what she'd just revealed. Jinwoo listened attentively, intrigued by Mrs. Selner's explanation of her extraordinary ability. He paused thoughtfully, then asked, "Exactly how effective is this power of yours?" Mrs. Selner replied calmly, "The effectiveness varies by individual, but after going through all 3 steps, most hunters see a 20% increase in their power. In some rare cases, it might even reach up to 30%. Jinwoo silently processed her words. No wonder Huang Dongsu had chosen to leave for the US despite the massive public backlash he received. A power that could elevate an already awakened hunter by nearly a third. Anyone would be tempted. Jinwoo thought quietly to himself. Even the strongest hunters would give almost anything for a chance like this. After the explanation, Deputy Director Michael leaned forward slightly, smiling confidently. "This is the gift we can offer you, Hunter Sung Jin-Woo. Should you decide to become a U.S. citizen and join one of our guilds, we will facilitate your entry into whichever guild provides the most advantageous signing bonus and benefits." Mrs. Selner, sensing Jinwoo's careful deliberation, reassured him gently. "There's no need to hurry. Like we said, it's simply a gift. No one's forcing you into a decision." Michael chimed in again, offering politely, "Perhaps you'd like to experience the first step now?" Jinwoo hesitated momentarily. Mrs. Selner had mentioned earlier how irresistible this power was once a hunter experienced it. She seemed utterly confident that anyone who tried it would come back asking for more. Finally, curiosity got the better of him. He nodded slowly. "All right, let's see it." Mrs. Selner reached forward gently, clasping Jinwoo's hand. "Just relax and look into my eyes closely," she instructed softly. Michael, observing from the side, couldn't hide his self-satisfied smirk. He thought confidently, "Now he's ours." He's kept calm until now, but once he experiences even a taste of this power, he'll be calling us first thing tomorrow. And if he's impatient, he might even sign on the dotted line right away. He watched closely, still amazed that Jinwoo had managed to effortlessly clear Jeju Island. Something that even Japan's elite hunter Goto, a man rumored to be close to national-level strength, had failed to accomplish. Michael wondered quietly just how high Jinwoo's limits might truly be. Yet, as Mrs. Selner delved into Jinwoo's mind, her surroundings dissolved into an endless expanse of darkness. Her breath quickened as her eyes widened in shock. Hovering within that darkness was an ominous figure, gazing directly back at her. Overwhelmed by a sudden and intense fear, she abruptly snapped back to reality, gasping sharply. Seeing her terrified expression, guards immediately reacted by drawing their weapons and aiming them at Jinwoo, preparing to fire. Deputy Director Michael leaped to his feet, shouting urgently, "Hold your fire! Do you fools even know who you're aiming at?" He quickly ordered them to assist Mrs. Selner instead, and turned apologetically towards Jinwoo. "My sincerest apologies, Hunter Sung. Our agents made a terrible mistake." But Jinwoo was unconcerned about the guards. Instead, His gaze settled thoughtfully on Mrs. Selner's trembling form. Is she all right? What exactly happened? Michael glared sharply at the nervous guards, reprimanding them severely. If you'd made this mistake in front of Thomas Andre or Lu Jigang, you'd already be dead by now. He knelt next to Mrs. Selner, urgently asking, "What happened? Tell me." Still visibly shaken, Mrs. Selner spoke with difficulty, her voice filled with dread. "He's a king, one of the most powerful kind." Confused, Michael asked carefully, "Do you mean he's at the level of national rank hunters?" She shook her head slowly, unable to suppress her trembling. "I can't be certain. I've never encountered anything like this before. He's a king, yes, but entirely different from any others I've known." She hesitated before continuing softly. "When I was inside his mind, I tried to gaze into him, but something else gazed back. It wasn't Hunter Sung himself, but rather the infinite darkness that resides within him. And for him, something like a limit doesn't even exist." Elsewhere, Chairman Go Gun he sat quietly in his office, lost in thought about the recent raid on Jeju Island. The painful memory of those who'd sacrificed their lives, especially the retired hunter Min Byung-gu who'd bravely returned to battle, weighed heavily on his heart. It was truly heartbreaking that such noble sacrifices were needed to end the crisis. But now that Korea had successfully cleared an S-rank gate, he worried that future raids might demand even greater sacrifices. His thoughts were interrupted by an urgent phone call. An agent anxiously reported, "Chairman, a B-rank gate has appeared right in the middle of the street." Chairman Go frowned, replying immediately, "A B-rank gate can't be handled by an ordinary attack squad. I'll contact the larger guilds right away." After quickly verifying the gate's exact location, a thought crossed his mind. Isn't that near the area where Hunter Sung Jin-Woo opened his new office? Meanwhile, Jinwoo sat trapped in frustratingly slow-moving traffic, still reflecting on the incident with Mrs. Selner. She had clearly witnessed something terrifying in his mind, perhaps a trace of the mysterious system inside him. Recalling her expression of sheer terror, he thought quietly, "I doubt she'll ever want to meet me again after that." Growing increasingly irritated by the unmoving cars, Jinwoo sighed. Should have just taken the subway. It would have been faster. Just then, his phone buzzed, a call from Chairman Go Gunhee. Answering quickly, Jinwoo asked calmly, "Chairman, is something wrong?" Chairman Go explained briefly, "A B-rank gate just appeared near your office. Can I ask you to handle it?" Jinwoo paused, slightly confused. "Am I allowed to raid a gate without prior permission from the Hunter Association?" Laughing softly, Chairman Go responded warmly, "Did you forget? I'm the chairman. Consider this my official permission. You don't have anything to worry about." Smiling lightly, Jinwoo thanked him before quickly arriving at the scene. Barricades blocked the area, with officials guiding confused citizens away. As Jinwoo approached the gate, a female official quickly stepped forward, blocking his path. "Sorry, sir. You can't enter without explicit permission from the association." As she studied his face carefully, recognition dawned. "Wait, you're Hunter Sung Jin-Woo." Even so, she hesitated. "I'm sorry, but even an S-rank hunter needs explicit permission." Without arguing, Jinwoo quietly called Chairman Go Gunhee, then handed her the phone with a polite smile. "Please talk to him. I think you'll understand soon enough." The woman listened nervously as Chairman Go firmly authorized Jinwoo's entry. As Jinwoo walked toward the gate, she muttered sheepishly to herself, "I hope he at least trips and twists an ankle." But as soon as she finished speaking, the gate began to shimmer, its color rapidly darkening into a sinister crimson. She stared wide-eyed, panicking. Did my wish actually curse him? Inside, Jinwoo immediately realized he had stepped into a red gate, a rare, dangerous variant with no immediate exit. Smiling faintly at the unexpected challenge, he recalled his mother's gentle words. "Now that you're an S-rank hunter, you should use your strength to save people, just like your father always did." His mother had shared fond memories of how his father, originally a firefighter before becoming a hunter, captured her heart with his selfless bravery. She had lovingly joked, "You're his son after all. I suppose I can't stop you, but please don't push yourself too hard." Motivated by her gentle encouragement, Jinwoo faced the oncoming monsters emerging from the dark forest with calm confidence. "This shouldn't take long," he murmured quietly, summoning forth his vast army of shadows, their intimidating forms rising obediently around him. As the shadows surged forward, effortlessly tearing through the monstrous horde, Jinwoo smiled softly to himself, thinking, "I'll finish this within a day." Just watch. Jinwoo's shadow soldiers stormed towards the monstrous horde, unleashing their might without hesitation. His shadow mages swiftly conjured blazing fireballs, hurling them directly at the creatures. The devastating blasts incinerated dozens of monsters instantly, sending fiery shockwaves rippling through the air. Standing firm amid the chaos, Jinwoo calmly watched as his powerful generals charged forward. Hunters are born to hunt, Jinwoo thought grimly, eyes sharp with quiet determination. But magical beasts aren't the only enemies we must face. Hunters who aren't careful risk becoming prey themselves. As the battle intensified, his generals overwhelmed the monsters effortlessly. Igris slashed through his foes with swift, merciless precision, sending their broken bodies crashing to the ground. Nearby, Iron swung his massive hammer downward, crushing an enemy beast into pulp, the force reverberating through the battlefield. Jinwoo observed solemnly, contemplating again. No matter how fierce the battle, first-rate hunters never let their guards down, because the tide can turn at any moment. Tusk and Tank rushed forward, effortlessly cutting down waves of monsters without breaking a sweat. Jinwoo's thoughts continued, unbroken and resolute. Even though countless monsters await us, true hunters will never tire of the hunt. There's no turning back now. Beru surged ahead, slicing through enemies with terrifying ease. Grasping the severed head of a defeated monster, Beru roared loudly in triumphant victory. The battlefield fell into sudden silence, broken only by Jinwoo's footsteps as he stepped forward. His soldiers and generals immediately parted, clearing a path for their master. Each shadow bowed reverently on either side, displaying absolute obedience. Bloodlust shone brightly in Jinwoo's eyes, a sinister grin slowly crossing his lips. With a chillingly grim and commanding voice, he declared, "On to the next target. Thank you all for your incredible support to the channel. We noticed that only about 10% of our viewers have subscribed so far. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing. It really helps us grow and bring more exciting stories to you. Also, we'd love to hear from you. Please drop your feedback, thoughts, or any recommendations you have down in the comments below. We'll be back soon with even more thrilling episodes. Until then, stay awesome, stay safe, and cheers!